Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody. Can you all hear me in the back? Okay, thank you. Welcome everybody to the July 13th meeting of the St. Mary's County Planning Commission. We don't have any sign-up sheets for out in the foyer this evening because all the public testimony was advertised and done at the last meeting. So tonight will be deliberation and any other decisions we may make. This meeting is being recorded as part of the public record. All comments must be captured on the record. Therefore, if any of the applicants wish to speak, you must do so using one of the provided microphones. All comments, questions, or responses must be directed to the board. The board will then address or refer them to the appropriate party. And please, we don't have to worry about that part. Anyone wishing to testify or ask questions, anybody that is talking this evening, we're not going to have any public testimony. We ask you to speak clearly and directly into the microphone. Lastly, we ask you to kindly silence your cell phones at this time to avoid any disruptions. Thank you for your cooperation. On our agenda this evening, let me get this straight. After an approval, a review and approval of the July 7th minutes, we'll have a discussions and deliberations for all of the cases that we had heard last week. At this time, I'll let the board members introduce themselves.
Good evening, Judy Filius.
Good evening, Lynn Delahaye.
Patty Robrecht.
Howard Thompson.
And Joe Van Kirk.
Jay Cousineau.
Connor Lochran.
Also with us this evening, we have the Director of Department of Land Use and Growth Management, Jessica Andrich, her Deputy Director, Brandy Glenn, her Senior Planning Specialist, Gabby Gleisner, and the other Senior Planning Specialist, Megan Higgs Carter. Also with us this evening, we have our Deputy County Attorney, Mr. John Sterling Hauser. I can't see people that are in the audience, but Mr. Jesse Harper. Jesse, are you?
Yeah, he's here.
Jesse Harper is here from the Department of Public Works and Transportation. Amy Wells from the St. Mary's County Metropolitan Commission, and Amy Carter is our video media producer, and also Mr. Saucer is here this evening. And the Public Safety Director. Ms. Utz, what's your first name? I'll write that down on my list. Okay.
Director Bivens is also here from Rec and Parks.
I'm
Ray
sorry.
Bivens.
Oh, I see him now.
Okay.
And I don't know if you got Christy Hollander from Metcom.
No, I didn't see Christy. Okay, then we got.
And did you note Heather Moritz from the Health Department?
No, ma'am, I didn't. All I see right now is like about a whole room full of people again. and I don't see. And I got bifocals on, so that makes it even worse. Trifocals. Okay. Sorry if I left anybody out. I apologize. I'll do better next time. Okay, did everybody have a chance to review those minutes?
Motion to approve.
Okay, I got a motion to approve.
Second.
And a second. All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, moving right along.
All right. So, Mr. Chair, Jessica Andritz, on behalf of the project team, I also want to make sure that we introduce our members of the consultant team. We have the project team lead, Leanne King, who is with us, and also an associate, Jasmine Davidson, and they are on the screen facing the audience. And hopefully that everybody can hear me okay. I've never heard somebody say they can't hear me, but if you're having problems, please just raise your hand and let us know. So I understand the order of business this evening is to seek some, I'm going to say, opinions, directions, guidance from the Planning Commission members regarding the three memos that were provided, the first one being the one from June 22nd, which is a document that we prepared that explained some edits that we thought were important to make. I must also just say that Cindy Greb, the Director of Economic Development, could not be here this evening. She's traveling back and will be with us in the morning. But I would be remiss in saying, if I didn't actually mention the importance of the edits that they had brought through in that June 22nd memo. You also have before you two other memos that were prepared and completed last week regarding the summary of state agency reviews and some recommended edits from the project team. And last but certainly not least, a memo prepared by the project team, but is on letterhead because it was prepared primarily by our office responding to some of the comments and recommendations that were received during the public comment period. Also, we ask that you take in turn each of the applications for changes in land use designation that you took up last week in the public hearing. And I believe representatives for various applicants are here this evening to the extent that you have any questions for them. So, Mr. Chair, I turn it back over to you.
Okay. We'll do the first three, the letters that we had, reports. The first one was dated June 22nd, and that was requested changes to the public hearing draft. Did everybody have a chance to review that? Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there any discussion on that?
Yeah, and it may have been picked up. I'm taking a look at this one that we just got. I wanted to make sure when I read all through the state's comments, and there were a couple that I wasn't sure that we fully addressed, and I'm looking at the housing.
Was this on the first or the second memorandum that we had?
We should be looking at the June 22nd memo. It looks like this. There's two.
This one. Okay, I believe, I looked at this one, and I'm still not sure if we addressed it in here. One of the comments, just off the top of my head, was we don't address, I don't know if we have a need to, but it is an issue for us in the county, is that we don't address anything about homelessness. And we don't address anything about coordinating with the housing authority, were a couple of the things that were brought up in the state's comments. So I'll go back here, and I don't want to take anybody's time, but just in going through all of the state's comments, those were the two that jumped out, was do we need, that it is an issue, and is this something that we need to address in this plan?
And if I may, on those 2 points, homelessness is a concern, and I believe it's something that would be addressed by the housing working group, as it's sort of described generally as I'm going to say on the issue of the housing authority. That information you will find in the July 13th memo from our department, because we are recommending a couple of additions.
Okay.
I will say that the Housing Authority did receive the community engagement team emails that went out, and so they were kept informed of milestones as we move forward with the project, with outreach and engagement efforts. But to the best of my knowledge, nobody from the Housing Authority reached out to us with specific comments or feedback, but they received all of the emails that were sent out to the community engagement teams.
Okay, so potential actions then we will, or things that we need to do will be addressed when we do this housing study.
That is the intention.
That's the intent.
Yep.
Okay, that was one of my comments. And there were a couple other things that there's some documents that are some, we have present, I put present or near-term future action. But like, there's some new plans that are coming out in October of this year. This plan is going to be approved in, sometime, hopefully this summer was the goal. And I assume then that if laws change or some things change, we'll just pick them up as they go. Can I make that assumption, or well, before I dig through and find out the ones that were specifically mentioned?
And I'm looking at council, and I would assume that we would be complying with anything as it related to updates and changes in state law. And there was, I think, one of the comments that was made in the MDP letter in relation to that. And certainly those things moving forward
Okay.
would be closely examined.
Okay. Those were my
Okay, we're gonna flip a little bit since we're working on the second part and the summary of state agency reviews. And Judy got her question answered. Is there any more on that?
Well, hold on a second, I hadn't looked at that yet. I mean, I had looked at it, but now we're on to July 13th, right? The thing
Yes.
that we got
Yes,
at
sir.
home to review.
Yes, sir.
It's June 22nd.
I didn't think number 3, what was said to be written doesn't make any sense to me. It's talking about Maryland and fair housing. While Maryland requires jurisdictions to further fair housing and include an assessment of fair housing in their housing elements, it does not require that housing elements assessments of fair housing include any specific analysis. It also does not require that local jurisdictions take any specific action to further fair housing, where earlier in there it says it should talk about fair houses. It seems to me that it's
Contradiction?
the paragraph doesn't seem to make any sense, and I'm not even sure what any of that means. I mean, fair housing seems to be a federally protected, and I think Maryland may even go above what the federal says about fair housing, but like I said, that paragraph to me makes no sense.
So we would certainly have to ask MDP, hey, what were y'all thinking when you wrote the comment letter? I will tell you that they, when we reached out for some clarification on a couple of items, they said that the letter that you all received was pretty boilerplate, something that they send out to all jurisdictions with a couple of changes here or there. I think what this is intended to say is, hey, the state has some visions and some goals, things that they want to accomplish, but exactly how locals go about accomplishing that is sort of anyone's game, I think would be fair to say. Did not get very much comment from the state as it relates to this topic, but the information is there in your packets, what the state said, and also has been summarized in the memo.
Well, that doesn't answer my question, though, that the paragraph makes no sense.
Well, it's the paragraph from the state.
Well, I understand that, but we're the ones that have to adopt it. It's just, at the top of the paragraph and the bottom of the paragraph, whether it's from them or not, to me, that's just me, it's contradicting.
Yeah, now that I look at it.
If you read it, it doesn't not, I mean, we can put it in there, I guess it doesn't, one spot it says you have to have it, and the bottom it says, well, you don't really have to have it, so it's, does not seem
I think
to.
they're asking us to go to their
Website.
fair housing website and look it over. But they're telling us that really they're not worried about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to be off about it, but I mean, that's more or less what the state is telling us, We'll take care of that
Yeah.
part, and we'll take care of our county.
I would also say that if you all have guidance and direction for us, if you'd like to see additional information, please do let us know.
Well, if you could get in touch with them and ask them the concerns we had for that paragraph.
Okay.
I don't know if that'll inhibit us from making a decision on the full packet tonight, but I'm like you, it didn't seem right. I had marks on that. I had marks on a couple other things, too.
Leanne, do you have additional thoughts that maybe you could share as well?
Sure, I think that, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I think that the correspondence that we all had with the state planners, my takeaway from that was that we met the expectations for the housing element, and in addition, they would like to see some additional analyses that were laid out. And I think there's some recommendations for how this could be addressed as part of future housing study work. One of those was the furthering fair housing, and I think you are accurate in that it's a slightly, I wouldn't say confusing, but it's unclear what the expectation is in terms of what local governments are supposed to deliver with respect to furthering fair housing in their comprehensive plans. Essentially, the state says, we want you to do it, here's a process we recommend, but by the way, you don't have to do this, and we don't require you to have implementation related to this either. So, it's a little bit of a kind of conundrum, so to speak, because there's not a basic minimum requirement, and we did attempt to address it within the comprehensive plan, as you might recall, when we did one of our housing discussions on the framework and analyses back in November. We looked at zoning and how that applied across the board with respect to different types of housing units that could be developed. We also looked at, as part of our trends and projections early in the process, looking at things related to furthering fair housing, such as income levels and cost burdened parts of the county, et cetera. And we included those within the housing element of the plan as well. So it sounds like they want to do more, and the website has ideas about what to do, but the county's not required to do it, is my understanding.
Okay. I had a couple other things, in the, not the one from the state, but I guess the ones from the July 13th, what we received at home on, yes. On the text, page 41 of the public hearing draft is like the third page in on the one part of that. Policy 2.4, locate industrial and office uses in development districts. So is this going to take any office uses from any other zoning or land use and have to be in a development district? No town centers, no, just reading how that says. And on the proposed edits, it says they want to revise policy 2.4 text to say locate industrial and office use in or near development district, town centers, airports, and away from existing residential uses.
And so your question was, I'm sorry?
I guess my question is, are they only going to allow office uses away from all residential? I mean, we have mixed use that would allow other things. That's the way it reads.
Right, and we would still allow that in mixed-use areas.
But are all, I guess what I'm asking is, are all the mixed-use areas in development district, town centers, or village centers
For yes,
for the most part?
yep, for the most part. Well, they all are.
They all have to be?
They have to be,
Okay.
yep.
Let me ask a couple more. I only had a couple things in this one.
Which one? Are you still on the same one? Make sure we're all on the same.
Yeah, it was the, not the one with the state.
The additional edits to the public.
Yes, the additional edits
Okay.
to the public hearing draft.
Right.
And now back on chapter 4, on the second page of that, the proposed edits talking about leveraging marine resources. The paragraph is using things, I don't even know what the words mean. So I'm not sure. I mean, it sounds fine, but to me, it's not written in plain English for everybody to understand.
So I'm sorry, can we get clarification that it did come as a comment from the St. Mary's River Watershed Association, some last-minute information? So you're talking about proposed edits to a particular action item? Which one are you looking at?
Well, where it says, what they're rewriting, St. Mary's County has always enjoyed vital attachment to the water.
Okay.
And then it gets down to,
Yep.
yes, to the shores of the St. Mary's River being bounteous source of Epicurean seafood. I'd like to know what that means. I didn't even look it up because I didn't know what it meant, so.
Fancy schmancy, appealing to sort of a luxurious side of one's self is what that means. Epicurean
I
seafood.
don't know, shucking an oyster is very, I'm just saying it sounds very formal, which is fine. I just thought that when
Yep.
people read this, they're like, well, wait a minute, let me Google it on my phone.
I think the Watermen Association felt a particular way about this language, and
That's
so
what they
that's why
like?
it was being proposed.
Okay.
Yes, sir. If
And
you'd
I
like to
had-
see something
that
different,
means-
please provide us some direction.
It means oysters are going to be more expensive.
I was just thinking that it could be written a little more in layman's terms for the average person that's going to be looking at this to me, but I guess it makes its point if that's what they want it. And one more. Back a few more pages, chapter 6, transportation element, and then the text from page 113 of the public hearing draft, and on the second page, consolidate and combine policy 1.2, 1.4 to read as follows. It's talking about well-marked crosswalks and sidewalks where feasible. Require adequate, well-marked crosswalks and sidewalks in all relevant developments and redevelopment projects where feasible, i.e., or e.g., new residential with lots less than 1 acre to enhance the public safety of community. Why wouldn't, if a subdivision had larger lots, they still wouldn't need crosswalks?
So I think what the thought here was, and it again came from I believe, a public comment, and I think the thought was it's really important to connect areas that are densely populated to some, I'm going to say the commercial uses and commercial corridors, so that folks living in denser communities, whether they're existing or future development or redevelopment, would enjoy easy access between their homes and where they might work or shop without having to get on the road. I think that's what the member of the public had suggested.
Well, I mean, I agree with the sidewalk, crosswalks, things like that, but I think they should be in all developments where feasible, whether they're new or redevelopment, just in my opinion of that paragraph. Other than that, that was it, so, thank you.
Okay, we're still on the July 13th additional edits to public hearing draft. Does anybody else have any comments they want to make? Do we want to accept this, or do we want to wait till we see if there's going to be any revisions after the comments from the board?
I'm back to the housing. When I read through the state's requirements and looked at ours, my one comment I want to make, and then maybe we can vote now or whatnot, but there were multiple things in the states that, comments on this that aren't necessarily clear in what's been picked up. It's like I went through and read the states, and I said, okay, here's an action, here's an action, here's an action, as far as this document was concerned. For example, on this is the state, the planning, from the Planning Department of Planning. For example, the county should also consider adding relevant policies for streamlining the development and review process for all developments located within designated growth areas, blah, 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 blah. That's an action. What I'm hoping, if we don't have some of these, that's one, but there's many other ones, like while St. Mary's, the same document, while St. Mary's 2050 does include some data on housing affordability, it does not analyze affordability using income categories, and it goes on. So it's almost like proposing that this is an action, and it's a good idea. And then and then back to Joe, the fair housing, it goes back to another one. While St. Mary's does acknowledge the requirement to assess fair housing, it does not assess fair housing beyond the inclusion of a social vulnerability index map. And there's others. So the only thing that I would suggest, because when I look here, we pick some things up, but we don't pick these other things up, is that when we do that housing study or that housing analysis, that we address these things in that analysis.
And that is certainly the intent.
Yeah, because again, I can keep going. Page 4 had a whole section checklist that I was like, well, that's not in the plan either. So, and again, I'm not recommending things that are just out there to be out there, but they're things that we should be doing, to address the need and that we have. So that's just my one comment there. But what I saw here on the July 13th stuff looked fine, as long as we pick some of these other things up when we do that study. And I did have a couple other things while we're talking about it. This was, again, the state, and this was about water resources. And I think we have a separate plan, but in summary, we have policies and actions related to extending water and sewer service, but does not include an analysis of current water and sewer capacity versus projected demand. And I believe, I don't know if we have a separate plan that we address the capacity based on the need that the state is saying that, or that we believe that we have. We need how many thousand homes? Remember, this is until 2050, so, just there's a couple things like that that I didn't see necessarily addressed in our plan. And a couple things, I'm assuming, like the mineral, do we have a separate plan, maybe under the economic development plan that addresses some of those things?
Leanne, are you able to speak on the water resources item?
Yes, so I just wanted to mention there was an evaluation as part of the trends and projections report. You might recall that document that we produced early in the process that basically has a series of existing conditions by different planning topics, as well as projections for particular population and housing growth. Then we later did some work with you all back in November when we looked at future land use, we looked at housing, and we also looked at water and sewer service areas. And we, through this process, updated the maps to identify the locations where there is current service. That's something that had not been updated, and sometimes so that has been updated.
Okay.
Our sub-consultant Burns and McDonald was the lead on our team for looking at water and sewer service, and I believe they coordinated with Metcom to share data and information that was available with respect to capacity of the system. And I think because of the nature of the fact that the system is very much built by projects that come on board. So as a new, let's say, residential development comes on board, it's adding to the water and sewer system, the public system that supports that infrastructure. So given that, I think that it's a little bit of a challenging situation to say exactly what the capacity is. And so we have some numbers in that trends and projections report, but we don't have a kind of hard, this is the capacity of this system, et cetera.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
I'll stop.
No, no. Jessica. We're running backwards on this.
Yes.
Can I suggest that, I mean, we can do the second half of our hearing this evening, but I think as far as these are, I think we're going to have to come back
Okay.
because we got questions to be answered. So,
And we're making note of those things, and Leanne and Jasmine are here primarily for that as well, so we can bring some information back to y'all.
so I'm going to go over the three lists, and if there's anything else you want to bring up, and then we'll get answers for it before we move forward with these sheets. Is everybody good with that?
Is this from the July 13th?
We can do that. The July 13th, the summary of state agency reviews and recommendations. So is there anything else? And if there isn't, and you can't think of it tonight, if you could get it to staff as soon as possible.
I can
So-
write
That's what I
them
would
down.
ask, because I hadn't read this 13th.
Okay. Well,
I'm
then
sorry,
that-
I couldn't hear you.
I hadn't read the 13th, so I'd like to have,
Time
The
to digest it?
opportunity.
Sure.
yeah.
Okay. So anything besides what we've already asked tonight, if you can get that, what you got?
Do you want to go back to the first one?
Why?
We didn't do it.
I know, we'll get there. I'm working, I said, we're going backwards. So it's 3-2-1 tonight. It's not 1-2-3.
So if we have any comments regarding the state agencies or the local comments, we can send them to
Please,
land use?
land use.
Is that what we would do?
Send them to Brandy.
Okay.
And then she'll let all of, because we can't send them to everybody, all of us. We can send them to her, and she can resend them to us, so we'll know
Yeah,
what
then-
everybody else is
Yep.
Right.
thinking
So we're
prior
all
to
on
the
the
next
same
meeting, so we
page.
can
that
ponder
okay?
all of them. Okay,
Yep.
that's good.
Okay, so that was number 2, so let's go with number 3, and then we'll go back to number 1. So, I'll just say, it. Review your letters. Write down all your suggestions, questions, and all. Get them in as soon as possible, because we want to move on, we want to move along. And then, we will readdress them on the next,
Do you want to do that right now? Figure that date out? Do you want to figure that date out right now?
yeah, why not? I like dates.
Are you available next Monday, July 20th? Sorry. No?
I'm not here.
No.
Okay. So how about
Look behind you.
July 27th? And I'll push,
I'm not here on the 27th myself. We're on vacation that week.
oh, thanks. Okay. So you're not here on the 27th?
Right, that's the only day for me that I won't be here, would be the 27th.
All right. How about August 3rd?
I'm available.
Everybody?
Bingo.
Patty?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Heard no negatives.
Let her
August
know.
3rd.
But we're still going to be in here on July 27th because
Yeah,
I know you can't be here, but we're still going to be here because we have 2 items.
I'll be here.
That's a regular meeting date.
6 o'clock.
Make sure you
6:30.
contact Mr. Sinclair.
Yeah.
I definitely will be here.
For which one?
27th,
Yeah.
I'll make sure I do that.
thank you.
Okay. Okay. Is everybody good for August 3rd?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Are we going to talk about the one from the 22nd tonight, so Brandy knows what we're thinking also, or?
That would be
We
helpful.
started talking about it, but we never got to it yet.
We tried. Yeah, we'll talk about all 3 of them. That's what I said. We'll do all 3 of them on that night.
But if you, Mr. Chair, so I think staff would be looking for any questions that anybody would have now on the information that is in the memo So if you have additional questions and stuff for us, let us know either, via email, as you've indicated, or even this evening, so we can make note
Okay.
of what those things are.
And if you do it by email, please refer to which memorandum it is that you're questioning, date and the information on it, whether it be requested changes or summary of state agencies or additional edits.
And so that the June 22nd memo just involved, I'm going to say, some minor updates with language to sort of account for where we are now in the project. The last one, I'm going to say substantive item, was one that was sent over to us from one of our sister agencies, the Department of Economic Development, as it related to the ferry. Information had been, actually, to take us a step back, during the Planning Commission work sessions that we had earlier, the consultant had made a suggestion that maybe things be consolidated a bit. It sounded maybe like there was too much information. The information was a little bit too detailed, and so the detail was removed, but economic development staff felt very strongly that the information be reinserted into the plan because they didn't wish to signal to other jurisdictions that had been involved in the feasibility study that there was no longer support. And I have not admittedly been a part of those discussions or that project. I'm just passing information on from staff, from economic development, but they did feel very strongly about it, and that's why the June 22nd memo prepared by the project team does include a specific attachment number 1, which is the memo with the detail, providing the history and the summary of the project, the ferry project thus far, because I don't know that you all have received any sort of specific briefing about the details of where that project was. So that's why the information is presented in that June 22nd memo. But if you have any specific questions for staff on that, like I said, the economic director is not able to be here this evening, but we can certainly get questions gathered from you this evening or as quickly as possible so that we could provide guidance and feedback, and certainly ask Director Greb to be present as well. You just let us know.
So we're going to talk about that on the 3rd, is what we're saying, not tonight? Okay.
Yes, unless, I'm going to say, because I'm not,
prepared to.
and I'm not the expert in that particular item, so I would actually like to defer to Director Greb and her staff, and we'll let them know that we're planning to meet on August 3rd. That work?
And let them know that, we need to know a little bit more of why they want to keep the ferry. And I mean, we've gone back and forth with it. And I think the last time we more or less said that it wasn't something that we thought would be in the comp plan, just because of the variables and the problems that it would face getting that done, both monetarily and I'll just say it for the area of how you're going to do it and where. So maybe they can have that information for us.
We'll share that request with them. No problem.
Okay. Okay. All right, then I guess we'll move along to the properties. Go ahead and get that done.
Okay, so comments.
Okay. Is everybody ready for that? I'm going to go in the list that we had them down before. The first one will be for Stanley Martin for the Wildwood development. Did anybody want to start the discussion on that? Have any questions that they want to ask the applicant while they're here? We won't be getting public testimony on it, but we'll be.
I do have a question for John.
Okay.
John?
Pardon me, Mr. Chair, I was looking up something else. What's the pending question?
I would like to ask you one. Ready? It's stated here that the client would be agreeable to submitting an agreement that would state that it would not exceed the 415. My question to you is, because I've been on this board for a long time and I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen when we thought we had an agreement, and then years later, they come in and request something that's different. Can it be overturned by a new board or by the appeals board?
My understanding, what we're talking about here is that most jurisdictions would call that, I think, and I'm going to invite Mr. Longmore to, first, if I misstate, hold back his comments, don't yell out, but if he's got questions or disagrees with this, obviously respect his longevity and his expertise in this field. But my understanding of Maryland law is that we'd call this contract zoning, which is an agreement that a local governing body will say that we will bring this property in a certain zoning on these conditions and make those binding conditions upon the property or any future development, or that's the strict requirement for changing the zoning. I do not believe, and I do not know of any authority that says Maryland, especially a commissioner form of government county in Maryland governed by land use article, Title V for this stuff, allows contract zoning. And while we could understand it's their intention to keep it, it would only amount to a gentleman's agreement, and there isn't anything hard and fast binding in stone that we could do to stipulate that the granted rezoning, when we get down to the zoning change, is contingent on this particular project going through versus any other type of project that an applicant or a subsequent purchaser of the property might choose to submit at a later date that complies with any other applicable development regulations for that zoning district. I don't think at this stage there is any way to bind them to any particular concept, site plan, or ID put forth to you all today. Now again, I invite Mr. Longmore, if he does think of that, to let me know if I got the read, and I'm happy to make that the second thing I will look up when I go back to my laptop over there.
Now, if we chose to table this, could they put in covenants within the deed that would restrict density and perpetuity voluntarily?
That's a better question I do not have an answer for right now. The issue with covenants, I'm skeptical of it, but I'm not going to conclusively rule that out right now. Because I think at the end of the day, you're changing at a very high level the appropriate land use category for a property. That land use category would then, in the next stage, when we talk about the comprehensive zoning maps versus the land use maps, determine what type of zoning districts could be applied to that property when we go to comprehensively rezone. Those zoning districts, in turn, change what development regulations, what permitted, prohibited uses are, and kind of what the technical safety, adequate public facility specifications for any project that's permitted in that would go forward. And I think probably the more we look for creative end-run ways to get around that, I just don't have a lot of confidence right now there is an appropriate vehicle we could use at this stage. The only thing that comes to mind is a development rights and responsibilities agreement, but I think that is more a device that locks a project into the development regulations in place at a particular time, not a zoning category change. Yeah. Sorry, I can't be more helpful in this, but I don't think there's a way to do it at this stage.
Now, I had a couple questions relating to that. More, John, you can stay there if you would. I may have a question with you, but for Brandy, and maybe even Mr. Longmore, if they only want to build 415 homes, why would they ask for residential medium density? What could they build with residential low density?
That's my other question.
Do you know I just was wondering what the density was per acre or whatever for low.
For residential low density, it's 1-to-1 and up to 5 with the purchase of TDRs. So I'd have to do it in my head.
Well, still have, I think it's 177 acres, so that would even be well.
I think they have 200 in some.
277 or
Yep.
something. That would be
Right.
still well exceeding the 415.
Yeah. They'd have to purchase TDRs, but
And I had one other question. On the front page of every single one of the land use change applications, it has a note that says, at this time, properties in the Lexington Park Developmental District are not eligible for land use change designations.
That's correct, because we're not changing, we're not doing anything to the LPDD.
But I understand that, but for a couple of these properties, this one and one other ones, they're kind of asking to do it backwards. They want to change the land use and then have themselves put into the Lexington Park Developmental District, which
That's
no other
correct.
property in there has the ability to ask for a change.
That's correct.
And let me ask one more question. If this goes or it doesn't go, or if any of them goes or it doesn't goes, when can a landowner ask for another land use change, which would be followed at some point by a zoning change?
So that's a
Outside of
legal
this?
question,
Okay.
and that would be the only time they'd be able to answer without being held to the change mistake rule would be the next time the commissioners undertake a comprehensive rezoning of that area or the county entire. And that has to be within 10 years, but could be sooner if a subsequent Board of County Commissioners wants to go sooner than 10 years. In the interim, between comprehensive rezonings, between this and whenever the next time they do that is, they'd have to, before asking for a land use category change or a zoning change, be able to prove change or mistake, which is either a change, a substantive material change in the composition of the neighborhood around that property requesting the change, or a mistake in either the facts or kind of the process that led to the zoning deliberation. That could be absolutely, we meant to say RPD when in fact we intended rural commerce, or kind of less mistakey, but still counting as a mistake, just proving that there was information not in front of the Planning Commission that could have been, or the commissioners in that case, that could have been taken into account at the time the original decision was made, but wasn't. If they can accurately prove that that wasn't part of the body of evidence or information relied upon at the time of the original decision. But it is a much higher and harder standard than what it is right now, which all it amounts to really at the end of the day is whether the Planning Commission and then the commissioners think that it's in the public interest or not. Forget about change in neighborhood, forget about mistake in process. Just what do y'all think is the right and proper use of that property?
Okay. And
Is an example of that the Wentworth Nursery when we went and had that changed?
I think Wentworth predated me, but yes, anything that has been done since 2010 is an example of a case where the Planning Commission, the Commissioner of St. Mary's County, found a change or mistake. And the applicant or their lawyer, Mr. Longmore, would have had to come up here and prove to you there was either a change in the surrounding neighborhood or a mistake in the thing. Like, I think the one mistake case I can remember was when there was a case where just a map was coded the wrong way in front of the Planning Commission way back when. That counts as a mistake. Change in neighborhood, substantial redevelopment beginning on a nearby property, or change in consumer patterns, something that you know was beyond our ability to anticipate or predict at this time. That's the kind of thing you're looking for when it comes to proving a change.
Would change in adequate public facilities would obviously fall in change in neighborhood characteristic?
It could, and I'm trying to think, and again, speaking off the cuff here, changes like that could, if there were a subsequent change in the adequate public facilities ordinances, that the type of projects, because standards changed in the interim time, that could potentially, I think, or if we predicted that, public service is not going to go out to one area, but for reasons that we could not really foresee at this time, suddenly there's development potential in new land, that could be a change in neighborhood. But the key there is that it's got to be beyond our ability to reasonably predict or foresee, kind of sitting here July of 2026. Because if it's the kind of change where we say, well, in 5 years, the neighborhood's going to have 10,000 more people, and then in 5 years, the applicant comes up and says, well, we've got 10,000 more people. That's a change in the neighborhood circumstances from where it was when you made this original zoning designation. No, because that's the type of change we could have foreseen and baked into the system or baked into the plan at that time.
So essentially an action item that could direct the adequate public facility ordinance to be overhauled or changed or anything like that would not qualify because we are seeing it at this stage.
I think what it would take is that if there were a hugely material change and they completely did it, although then it gets into question of what type of huge material change to an adequate public facilities ordinance could not run contrary to the intent and purposes of the comprehensive plan we're doing. I'd say conceivably, maybe there's a way a change like that would count as a subsequent change. I don't think it's likely, though.
Okay. Thank you.
a quick question, I don't know if for John or Brandy. Since we're speaking about this one, and this is not the only one, because we have multiple properties that are asking for the change, and then to be incorporated either into Lexington Park Development District or Hollywood Town Center or something. What's the critical part of being, if the land use was changed, why does it have to be put into Lexington Park Development District or Hollywood Town Center or any other development district? Is that just a caveat of something that they're asking for? Doesn't change density, does it, if it's under the same zoning or land use? If this went forward and it was voted on to change, but the board said, we changed the land use, but we do not want it to be put in the Lexington Park Development District, what does that change for the application?
So you're going to have a piece of this huge property that will now be, well, the land use will be RM, sitting in the middle of nothing, really, just what would be rural preservation. It won't be in a town center, it won't be in a development district. It'll be out in the middle of nowhere,
Well, but
sort of.
and I'm speaking without looking at I did not look this up. I don't think Forest Farms is in the Hollywood Town Center.
It's not. And
Or
it's
the
out-
Lexington Park Developmental
It's not,
District.
and it's also RPD.
Well, right, I know the laws was allowed back then
Mm-hmm.
and something, I think when I looked that up, the county didn't change, but Maryland law changed or something?
Correct.
Is that what
That's exactly what happened.
they could do that?
And they,
Then.
right, and they, well, they could even do that now. What Forest Farms has is a package plant.
For
They have
septic.
public sewer.
Right.
And water. So somebody who wants to do that now in the RPD could do that. And then
Is-
you wouldn't have to bring it into a development district or a town center.
Is that why they did it years ago? If they hadn't put the package in, they couldn't have put individual septics in RPD even then?
Not into a subdivision that large.
Okay. Because they have like, I think I read 286 homes or 288
Correct.
homes or
Correct.
something like that.
But Forest Farms is not in a development district or a town center. It doesn't have to be. It's still RPD.
So they kept each lot when it was split off into acre, 1 acre, 2 acre, whatever they are, each one is still RPD?
Yes. Yep.
And they're on their own sewer? I mean, their own septic system?
No, they're not.
No,
They have
it's
they have a
public.
package plant that,
Okay.
and Christie can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's owned by Metcom.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
So they're served by public sewer.
So the,
So well, it just doesn't happen. I'm thinking, I'm looking at the whole map of the county, thinking of an area where we might have RM zoning outside of a development district or a town center, and it just doesn't happen. We have pockets of RNC, but that's okay. Those subdivisions are that's normal to occur, and we expect that to happen. And they're typically on Lake Golden Beach. They're on septic systems. They're outside of the town center. But that's residential neighborhood conservation. The land use that'll be placed over that will be rural preservation. Yeah, you just don't have these kind of developments outside of a development district or a town center.
but since it's kind of a way of going in through the back door of a whole great big area, Lexington Park Development District, that's not allowed to change right now, or even ask for a change. For someone to be able to ask for a change and then say, oh, by the way, we want to be put into an area that can't ask for a change. Does land use does the office not have a problem with that? I mean, it's, nobody else can do it.
Well, so we're not letting the Lexington Park Development District, people inside of the Lexington Park Development District ask for changes right now. Outside, you can. So that's why we don't have a problem with this, because they're outside of the Lexington Park Development District. They can't ask to be brought into the Hollywood Town Center. They're nowhere near it.
So I think a different way to answer the question is that several years ago, there was the creation of the Lexington Park Development District Master Plan. One of the next steps that staff and consultant teams will work on is putting together an implementation plan for the Lexington Park Development District Master Plan. And so it makes sense to freeze the master plan in place as the implementation plan starts to be developed. And so that was, I think, the real crux of why we said that changes to land use designations in the Lexington Park Development District could not be considered at this time because we needed to freeze things where they were within those boundaries so that the creation of the implementation plan for that master plan gets started.
Well, everything else is frozen except if this is approved, that's changing the boundaries that you say are frozen of the Lexington Park Development District. Because we have another property down south on Route 5 that's asking to be incorporated into the Lexington Park Development District also. Or it was. I think they just changed their zoning or what they're asking, I mean, not the zoning, their land use that they're asked for with their latest letter or something. So.
Sure, and I want to be clear, it's not that, Lugum has taken a position one way or the other, whether we support an application or not. But it's just to say that properties within the development district, within the Lexington Park Development District, could not request a change to their designation. But we did not specifically prohibit changes or requests to come forward that would enlarge the development district, if you will. That something squarely within the purview of the commissioners. And so that's why these applications were processed and brought forward to you. Okay?
Just a clarification question. Are we able to annex them into the district and not change the zoning? The benefit for them, how I see it, is that they're, as Joe said, they're kind of going in the back door. So if we were to accept them into the annexation under their current zoning, then they would not be allowed to change to request their zoning, right?
Well, so remember that that question involves sort of the two-step process, and I would remind you of that again. So we're not talking about zoning, and I appreciate and understand what your question is, but you do have to remember that tonight we're not talking about zoning. And I will say also that the information in the plan does explain sort of what land use areas are, I'm going to say, created by the plan or consolidated in this particular case, and your typical zoning that you might see, but I don't want to put the cart before the horse and say that, what if the commissioners approve through your recommendation a change to the boundary of a development district, but refuse to change the zoning, what that would look like, because I wouldn't want to put the cart before the horse. We're not here for zoning. Certainly, there would be some inconsistencies and some challenges that would need to be worked out if the land use area request was approved, but later the zoning did not. What that would look like, I'm not too sure, but it would cause some confusion in the administration of the ordinance for sure. Is that helpful?
Yep, thank you.
So I've really given this a lot of thought. I'm sure we all have. And I've outlined for myself some concerns that we've heard from the community, concerns that deserve careful consideration before any decision can be made. It sounds like there's a lot of still things logistically that needs to be checked out, changed legally, backdoor things. Our community is growing, and we welcome thoughtful development. But the Stanley Martin proposal asks our residents to absorb impacts that our infrastructure simply isn't ready for. First, the projected population growth. Based on the developers' own significant numbers of new residents compared to today's population levels in this part of the county, it's just going to be extraordinary. We're already experiencing a steady growth, and adding several hundred additional units in this concentrated area will accelerate that trend. The question before us is whether our current infrastructure can absorb this growth reasonably. Secondly, our roadway capacity, specifically Lawrence Hayden Road. This corridor is already operating near its functional limits during peak hours. Just drive down there, you'll see it. The proposed increase in daily vehicle trips could place additional strain on our roadway that's not designated, is not designed for the volume that's projected with this. Without substantial upgrades, we risk worsening congestion, increasing travel time, and reducing overall safety for our existing residents. Third, immediate safety needs along Wildwood Parkway. This roadway has documented issues related to sight lines, turning movements, and pedestrian safety. Adding more traffic to a corridor that already needs improvement is not a responsible approach. Safety upgrades should be addressed before any development that increases traffic is approved. Fourth, school capacity. Our schools are facing an enrollment pressure today, and this project would add more students into our system already overloaded, with class sizes being huge and not enough staff. Without a clear plan for how additional capacity will be funded and implemented, we risk placing avoidable strain on our education infrastructure. Finally, emergency services impact. Feedback from our emergency services personnel indicate that increased population and density and traffic congestion will lengthen response times and place additional demands on our EMS, our fire, and our law enforcement resources. These are not theoretical concerns. They are operational realities that affect life safety issues. In summary, the proposed land designation changes raises substantially questions about infrastructure readiness, roadway safety, school capacity, and emergency services. Growth must be planned, not rushed. You've heard me say this time and again, I keep feeling rushed. We can't rush this. I urge the commissioners to weigh these impacts carefully and ensure that any development aligns with the long-term health, safety, and sustainability of our community. We owe it to our residents to ensure that growth strengthens our community rather than overwhelming it. This proposal, as it stands, does not meet this standard. That's all I have to say.
I have a couple questions for Mr. Longmore. I know he's been wanting to get up here anyway, but I did have some
I
questions.
heard my name
for-
quite a bit, so let's come up to the table. Thank
I
you.
did have some,
Yes.
questions.
Sure.
Since we didn't get to ask them last week, let me jump around. Some of this stuff's already been,
And if I can't answer them, for the record, the applicant, the representative of the applicant, Sean Day, is here, and so is Danielle Conroe, the project engineer on the project. So
Okay,
if I can't, they may be able to.
and I did not look this up or speak to Metcom or nothing, but is this property, if approved, going to be placed under water and sewer?
Yeah, that's the
It's under
intention.
no plan service? Is that what it's under now?
Well, right now it is. They would need an amendment to the comprehensive water and sewer plan, like you see with many projects.
And has
Maybe
it
not
ever
all.
been checked with them for availability?
Well, right,
I mean, I know.
We're asking- this is-
I'm putting the horse before
Right.
the cart. I don't mean to do that, but I'm saying I would think you would have, I'm sure you guys have already, crossed your Ts and dotted your Is on
well,
some
that,
stuff that,
that would certainly be the plan to go, and if they can't get that, they can't go forward with the project.
Sure.
You know, a lot of the comments, Commissioner Delahaye, that you made are really site plan comments. And the planning commission well knows that if this plan comes before you as a concept site plan down the road, 2-3 years down the road, and you don't find adequate traffic, I am confident this planning commission will deny that application because I've seen you do it over and over again when you're not comfortable with the project. This is only allowing the possibility of it down the road. So a lot of those, I think, are certainly important considerations, and it's something that my client and their engineers and their full team, their traffic engineers, all of their engineers will have to be here, and all of their planners will have to be here to present it when it's ready to present. We're at a step that usually is not part of the process. And, Mr. Hauser mentioned that this happens every 10 years. It's been 16 years since the last time we did this. So it's not automatic, it's 10 years. And that's why I think you have 7 or 8 landowners asking for changes throughout the whole county. The only time in the last 16 years they're allowed to do it for the reasons why they can present their plans for it. We presented the plans because we knew that the planning commission would have questions about it. So would the public. So that's what the plan is. But by no means by you voting on this are you saying this project can go forward as we showed you last week. It's only that it's a possibility for them to come back and present it to you. And if you don't think there's adequate schools then, if you don't think there's adequate roads then, if you don't think there's adequate sewer and water then, you're going to deny it based on the concept site plan standards that you deny other projects on. We think we can meet them all, and we think we'll be able to, but that's ultimately going to be your decision. That's what the law and the county gives you the authority to do. I'm in front of you
And I'm not
every other
trying
week
to
doing
ask
that.
you concept site plan questions. Some of them seem like that because I guess we're curious as to how certain things would be achieved. But what I would like to give you a chance to explain is when you sent a letter proposing what you guys would do, and I mean, I've read all
Right.
that and I understand that, but my one question on a couple things would be, you're proposing dedicating only the site for a recreational facility. And you also had mentioned somewhere about, wasn't there something about designating a site or talking to the school board about
Some
a
land.
possible
Yes.
Right.
school site?
To address the needs at Evergreen, if they needed additional acreage to do additional work or other support from us, they're proposing that they will
Let me
work
ask you a
with them.
question. I think I remember this, but I can't 100% sure. Mr. Day may have to answer this, or you very well may know, but didn't Stanley Martin or Wildwood actually build Evergreen? They didn't just give them the land, did they?
Oh, I mean, Sean, if you want to address, he knows more of the details because I wasn't representing him at the time.
Good evening, Sean Davis, Stanley Martin. Thanks for the questions. So I think what you're, requires a little bit of memory, go back to the memory banks a little bit, but Stanley Martin provided the parcel where the school was built, and then they extended Wildwood Parkway back to the entrance and a little bit beyond the entrance where the school is currently, and extended all of the public infrastructure back there to meet the needs of the school construction. They did not build the school, however.
Okay.
The building itself or any of the improvements that you see at the school, they did not do that.
Okay.
And
So-
Commissioner Van Kirk, one of the things that touches on that I've heard that I couldn't agree more with the public comments both before you and all over Facebook and other social media is the need for infrastructure in our county to allow the new development. One, those large numbers that I showed in my presentation were not from Stanley Martin. They're from your draft plan that you're about to recommend. They're from your consultant and from your staff, the numbers they looked up based on the state numbers. So those are not developer numbers. Those are in your plan that you reviewed, and that chapter I understood was almost ready to be approved tonight. So those aren't our numbers. Those are what the state is saying is going to move into the county. And for better or for worse in our county, if you want to be realistic about how infrastructure is built here, the lion's share of it is built by developers. And you all have seen that over and over again. There's very few county public roads that are built from scratch. FDR's the big exception to look at that in recent years. The only way the inter-county connector gets built is if a developer comes in and builds their section of it. That's what these folks are proposing to do. The only way Lawrence Hayden gets upgraded in all likelihood is if you look at this developer and say, if you're going to come in with a project, you have to go upgrade that and make it safer for everybody that's already on it. This developer knows that very well may be part
of a condition that would be on there. That's the way we get new infrastructure in this county. If we say no to all development in it, it means that there's going to be no new infrastructure because we just freeze that. Because for better or for worse, our local governments do not forward fund a lot of that because there's not enough money in the pot to do that. So that's how we get it built. You can look up and down, you know, many examples of other projects that I've been in before you, and I've seen my clients upgrade the roads, upgrade the facilities, and it's all at their cost. That's part of the development cost, sure, and they make a profit off of it or they wouldn't be doing it. But that's a much added expense and much less profit for them. But it's the only way our county gets these things. It's the only realistic way short term, and by short term, I mean in the next 10 to 15 years, to get any of this done is to let the developers do it because they can get it done quicker if they're doing it as part of their project. And that's the facts.
Well, it's true, but the problem with thinking like that in my mind is I don't see all the big developers in St. Mary's County getting together and say, hey, just out of the goodness of our heart, over the next 20 years, why don't we expand Route 235 in case we want to build or somebody else wants to build? Nobody does it until it serves them for wanting to do something. And I'm not saying I don't disagree with that, but I'm saying it's not like everybody's doing it out of the goodness of their heart, each developer. They're doing it when it serves them. And we have ongoing projects now that infrastructure is waiting to be upgraded, and nobody does it until they specifically have to. Look at the project across from Wildwood. We've been waiting for that third lane to come from Route 4 and tie into the other one that they put in at the Royal Farms, and until they meet a certain traffic threshold out of there where the movie theater and Aldi and all is, still waiting, 3 or 4 years later. It seems like last time they were here, it's all approved, it's all permitted, it's all bonded. Well, it still hasn't happened. So I'm just saying that I understand it's done, but it's never done until
It's done.
it specifically has to be.
So
It's
if I could, sir, add one to that. The unique thing about this property that maybe we didn't fail to make clear is that when the Wildwood project was constructed, all of the infrastructure components that were built there were sized to accommodate the full build-out of that planned unit development. And there are 415 units, which is why we, use that number in our proposed request for density. There are 415 units that were not built inside the Wildwood PUD. However, all the infrastructure was there. We mentioned the school parcel, the Wildwood Parkway connection all the way to the end, well beyond where there's any houses. That was built by Stanley Martin. The 750,000 gallon water tower that you see at the end of, towards the end of the parkway, that was built by Stanley Martin. There's a state-of-the-art wastewater pumping station that had to be built by Stanley Martin to accommodate the full development, as well as all the water and sewer lines and systems. They were sized appropriate for the usage of the entire PUD. The improvements throughout 235, as you mentioned, that have been made were made by Stanley Martin as a result of the Wildwood development. That's already in place for that number of units generated. The Wildwood Parkway concerns, again, traffic studies will need to be updated, but those trip generation rates were contemplated in the original traffic study that was approved by the PUD for the number of trips generated by that development. Now, if we talk about speeding, traffic calming, other concerns like that, that's something we can absolutely talk about, and we would love to, have the opportunity to dive in and help address some of those concerns. But as far as the adequacy of the public facility, that was contemplated with the 3792 units of the Wildwood Parkway. The connection to Lawrence Hayden Road, Stanley Martin actually built an alternate connection to Lawrence Hayden Road through the Primrose Park development, and that was to provide an additional means of egress out of Wildwood, so there wasn't only just one. With this proposal, it would contemplate upgrading Lawrence Hayden Road as necessary based on the traffic studies that would be provided and show what would need to be done. We'd have to work with the Department of Public Works to determine what the cross-section of roadway would be there to support our proposal. that would provide another way out of Wildwood that is a more up to standard road as opposed to a through the development connection. So that's kind of what we see the Wildwood Preserve project would, which is what we're kind of calling this back section back there. That would provide that critical piece of the cross-county connector that would give an alternate way in and out of Wildwood for residents, for school buses, for EMS, and all those things that have been brought up. Additionally, the new project back there would contemplate to contribute to the water and sewer fees that Metcom charges. And again, completion of the design and construction of the sewer, the water and the roads, the stormwater management, all the sediment control, the preliminary grading to support the regional recreational facility use that was indicated on the map that we shared, to where it would be a pad site that would be ready for the county to construct certain other recreational type facilities as they see deemed necessary. And again, as has been mentioned, we would work with the Board of Ed there to look at what the needs are for schools in that area, specifically the Evergreen Park Elementary School, whether that's to provide design and consulting services to see how that current property use could be further utilized to its maximum extent capable, and/or donation of additional land as needed to support their needs, which we are happy to dive in with them and figure out what that is. I also wanted to mention one other benefit that's provided to address the drainage and the stormwater management concerns. The earlier sections of Wildwood were under a different set of regulations. The newer section of Wildwood that Stanley Martin built was required to do environmental site design to the maximum extent practical, which is affectionately known as ESD to the MEP. So basically what that means is there was a lot of microbiome retention facilities, submerged gravel wetlands, smaller type devices that are mixed throughout all those newer sections of Wildwood, which preclude you from developing it the way that it was done before. Additionally, this development in the new section would have to adhere to those same MEPs, ESD to the MEP, which would provide the 100-year, also the 2-year addressing of runoff there too. So it's at a higher standard of drainage and runoff there. So I did just want to kind of point that out, that although this property is not in the development district, although it is not zoned for the 415 units that we are asking for, it is adjacent to infrastructure that was already built to accommodate the number of units we're asking for. That's kind of why we are asking for that number of units. It is because the infrastructure is already built to support that size of public water and sewer and road facilities. So although it's not in that district, it is adjacent to development on both sides that is consistent with a higher density of residential development than you typically see in the RPD. This property is also isolated. It's not something that we see from the road. It seems to lend itself to a considerable type of development that we've seen. If you look at the slide that we presented before, and it shows just on the County GIS website, and you see you can get to a proper level of to zoom, and you can see the density of Wildwood, you can see the density of Forest Farm, and then this property is just, it's void of density. It seems to be a missing puzzle. To me, it looks like a missing piece of a puzzle that could be accomplished with this opportunity. So
I have a
any
question.
further questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, I have a couple. Right now, as it stands, how many houses can you put in there right now?
7.
7. And you want to go to 415?
The 7's because of the state
I
septic bill that went into
understand.
effect,
But I
not
think
any county
to
decision.
piggyback on to Mr. Kirk is, if this were to go through, you're not going to build a road to accommodate it before you build one of the houses.
So
The reason why I bring that up is because, just bear with me for a second. This year, the board, now for 415 units, let's say, 2 cars, that's 920 more cars. I'm not even talking about trips, just talking about cars on the highway. We've approved Meadow Townhomes, 162 units. Bradley Brook, 223 units. Lighthouse Commons, they're still in the works. Pembroke, 140 units. Stewart's Grant, 1,122. Pax River Townhouses, 95.
Thank you, Jim.
Norris Subdivision, 44. FDR California, 221 units. Jacobs Run, 420. That's a total of 2,486 houses, units that we have approved this year. Just think of the traffic. And that's in California, Willows Road, Great Mills, Lexington Park. Our infrastructure cannot take care of this, 920 extra vehicles a day. It's just, we're not there yet. We're just not there yet. And if we had a crystal ball, that'd be great. We could look down and say, well, you can build 100 this year and 100 next year till 250. You're not going to do that. No developer can exist that way. As soon as you get permission, you're going to go in there and start building, and then we'll go, oops, we need more roads. Let's fix it. It's putting the cart before the horse again. We got to be thoughtful about this.
Well, and again, this isn't approving a project tonight.
I know it's not, but
It's really not. And if you feel that strongly when the project comes before you, you can vote against it. If the roads aren't there, they haven't even applied for it yet. We don't know. We don't have a crystal ball. So we don't have a crystal ball to do
and I
it.
don't want to penalize
But if we're
them.
in the future and it's not available, there's not adequate public facilities, I know this planning commission will deny a project because I've seen you do it a couple times in the last year when you don't feel they have adequate.
It's not very nice, Mr. Longmore.
No, but that's the
look how many
that's
we've
the
approved, Mr.
process.
Longmore.
Okay.
That's the process that we have in place, that you all are the check on projects that aren't ready to go forward, and you exercise this. And there can be phasing to projects. It's in the zoning order, it's in the subdivision order. That can be a mechanism. I've had projects that have done that. So we submitted the letter in follow-up for a couple of reasons. One is Sean, you can correct me, but we wanted to be real clear on what they're proposing and have it in writing so you can throw it back at him when he comes in with this application if you approve this. And you can say, wait a minute, this is what you agreed to. The agreement that we're proposing that Mr. Hauser spoke on was a development rights and responsibilities agreement that our zoning ordinance allows for. My client has said they're going to submit that with their concept site plan. We're saying that out loud tonight, and we're saying that in our letter. If it's not there, you can say, I don't think it's adequate without that, and you can deny it. This is a way for the county to get a site ready for another recreational facility. We need those. We need a regional recreational facility like this. This is a way to get the inter-county parcel connector built in a way that you're going to see a lot quicker than otherwise. This is a way to get somebody that's willing to potentially dedicate more land or engineering costs to the schools to help them do it. I don't recall somebody sitting in front of you in recent times that's offered that much as part of a project for 415 homes. And so there's a lot you would leave on the table if this was
Sometimes you
not.
have to make a decision without the carrot sticking out there. You got to look at what we have on
Certainly.
paper.
But I think that you got to look at the whole picture too, though.
And I'm looking at the whole picture, and I mean, you keep doing that part of it, but one of the things you had said about you can't do any zoning changes, you haven't seen it in 15 years, I can think of 2 properties that we have where you can come before the boards, and you can have those zoning changes.
No, but it's only if there's a change in a significant change in the neighborhood. And when you adopt this plan
That's
in
a significant-
2026, it's how long after that plan's adopted that the neighborhood changes. This is the first time in 16 years that property owners outside of Lexington Park have been able to come to you and ask for zoning changes based on their policy reasons why the county needs it. And look at the map that was released by the Navy on that. Our whole development district is in an area that they wish to study? Like, this is forward thinking for the next 20 years. We're not sitting here saying that this is ready to be built tomorrow. You may see it and say, That area isn't ready for it yet. This only gets them in the door. So over the next 10 to 15 to 16 years, when the next planning commission is sitting here with the new plan, that this will be in place so that we have it available in stock. And again, those housing numbers are not, I want to be clear, there are public comments last week and there's one from the table tonight, that those were numbers that we made up or that the developer came up with. They're in your plan from your consultant. Like, that's what they're saying is going to happen to the county, and we can either prepare for it or not. And we think that this is an appropriate site for all the reasons Sean said, that it's really unique in the county. There aren't many sites like this that could provide the amenities they're willing to provide and provide the housing that I think our community is going to need based on your plan.
You just brought that up. That's another issue. You're talking about interparcel connector, that's needed that would go through there. I think right now with the wetlands that you have on this property and stuff, there hasn't been a study. There's going to be some problems.
Mr. Chairman, I draw your attention to the letter we submitted because it cites the county transportation plan that says that's where the road's supposed to go.
Yes.
That we didn't make that up. And my client's engineers have looked at it and they believe it's feasible. So to answer that question, yes, it has been looked at.
It's feasible with time and money.
Well, yeah, their time and money.
Well,
And it's in the county plan to put it there. That isn't him making it up. That's our county plan that went into place. I cited both plans that's it.
Well, we just had a applicant come before us for 400 homes. They didn't want to do it. They wanted to go through an existing development that was already there. And we had to finally make enough conditions that they had to do the roundabout, have the road in. They had to go through changes to get that, and they still don't have the permission because they have wetland problems, they have property deeded problems. They might not have that problem, some of those problems, but costs. I don't think this has to be, and this is my opinion, I just don't think this has to be decided on tonight. I think you can come back in a couple of years and have that. You can have it. Please don't applaud every time I say something because it knocks me off my A game. Y'all don't want me off my A game. But I just think it's something, yes, we can do changes in this a little bit further down the road. This is a big change from an RPD, and to do that, I know there's a lot of elements going into it. Recreation, when you use the word recreation, everybody likes recreation, but it's what that comes all around it. So, I do see your point, and it does have to go like this, and with the Navy, but are we ready to do this right this moment with this zoning change? This can be changed. This can be changed.
I would just defer to Attorney Hauser. They came out and spoke about the high standards that there are to change it right after a comp plan goes into place. The reason why you all saw all the zoning changes in the last 5 years is that this comp plan is 6 years late. And there are property owners that did not have that opportunity 6 years ago to come to you and say, our neighborhood has changed. It's a much higher hurdle 2 years from now that would be real difficult. In the case, unless we can show the 7 of you made a mistake in this plan or the county commissioners did when they adopted it, that's really the only way to get it realistically changed in 2 years.
Mr. Longmore's right on that read of the law, and when he says that if he does come up here in a few more years, it is a much higher burden to call, you are, remember, by definition, for him to succeed for a piecemeal rezoning outside of the comprehensive zoning process, he or any other lawyer who might be doing it by that time, the applicant would hire, would have to demonstrate to the county commissioners that there is either the type of change in that neighborhood's composition or the development patterns of development that have undergone between now and whenever they'd make that request that was beyond your ability to rationally predict today, or they got to point to a mistake in the process, either inaccurate or incomplete information that was before you at this time, or a clear misunderstanding. You all have all the right in the world to say no at this time, but you can't say no, come back again another time, and we'll treat you different or see how it pans that time. You've got to play the ball where it lies as far as tonight goes.
So
That's just the state law. That's
Right.
just the process. That every 10 years we can come forward and say, now, and in this county, it's 16 years ago was the last time. So it's every 10 years, the quickest probably. I mean, I know it can be quicker, but it's rare that a county takes it on sooner than that. It could. But That's why we're asking for it now. That's why I keep saying, just give it the potential to do that. And if the application comes before you in 2 years and you say we're not ready for it, there's not adequate facilities there, my client's going to be upset that you turned down his application that night. But if you don't do it now, I can't come back like you're suggesting, Mr. Chairman, because the law is written the way that it is. The only reason those other ones came before you in the last 5 or 6 years is I could come in front of you on the ones that I did and say, it's been 12 years since you looked at this neighborhood. Look at all these changes in it. The plan was supposed to be done a couple of years ago. It wasn't. This neighborhood has changed. My client shouldn't have to wait until ultimately the comprehensive plan is done. And you all took them project by project. You denied some, you granted some, looking at the neighborhoods they were in. So that's why we're here tonight. This isn't as simple as a site plan we can come back in a year or two and tweak. This is the only opportunity for the next decade to do
Just have one
this.
question. Even if the zoning changed, he couldn't come back then?
If the zoning
If the
changed.
zoning
The zoning has
changed-
to change as part of the comprehensive planning process.
So-
So that's part of this process.
So if when we do the zoning, like we're doing the comp plan now, and that area is incorporated into the Lexington Park District, then can he come back?
So the way I understand it, and
I mean, 'cause
and
we're doing
Director
it
Andrews
backwards now,
or
so-
John can correct me, the comprehensive plan and the land use map comes first. That's what we're here tonight for.
Right.
You'll adopt that as part of the comprehensive plan. The next step will be considering rezoning certain properties. The comp plan says this, and Maryland law is pretty clear on this, that a property's zoning category has to be consistent with the land use map.
Right.
So if you don't change the land use map, it can't be rezoned to something that's inconsistent with it. So that's why the land use maps change now, and then applicants can come in, or you all will look and say, all right, here's the land use map changes we made last September, or August, whenever you adopt them. And then you say, all right, what do we need to rezone to make it consistent with that? That's when the property would be rezoned. Property wouldn't be used until an application's presented to you and you find it meets all the rules and as you know, the rules include that it promotes the health, safety, and welfare of the county. And if you don't think it does, you can deny it then. Like, this is not approving this project by any means, and that's why it's so hard to do that on a conceptual level. But I don't think you could go and rezone it 6 months from now if you don't change the land use as part of the comprehensive plan.
Yeah,
The
I think Mr. Longmore's right about that. But deciding the land use map category, you're more or less locking this property, any property, to the applicable zoning districts for that land use, which at most you're talking 2, 3. I think for rural preservation, it's only rural preservation district and rural residential that are the applicable zoning districts that this draft of the comp plan identifies as being proper for a rural preservation land use designation. And I think it would be probably contradictory to the comprehensive plan to keep the land use rural preservation, but then when zoning comes along saying no for specific features unique to this one case, we think that we should be able to overrule the recommendations and the overarching policy of the comprehensive plan and give it RM, RL, whatever we might decide or feel at that moment is the right policy. Because this really is the moment to be making and deciding policy. Everything that comes after that is just compliance with the rules and the overarching principles you recommend and the commissioners ultimately adopt in this process.
Let me ask one more question about, it's been talked about that interparcel connector for many, many years. And I understand that, Stanley Martin has proffered to do something. If that was approved, how much would they actually do? Is it a half a mile? Is it a mile? Is it a quarter mile?
I do not have the exact length of it, but I can tell you, sitting here right now without a map to look at, that it would go from where the end of Lawrence Hayden Road is currently located, and it would go through this property that we're proposing to change to. It would go up to Wildwood, where the end of Wildwood Parkway is now. I don't know how far that is. And then we had showed on the land use concept map that we presented at the last hearing, there was a couple different routes that the county's master transportation plan suggested. So that was where there was different options. But the part that I'm telling you about is, is pretty well set, where it would go. there's some defining environmental features that would dictate where that road would need to go to that point.
I guess the reason I'm asking that is, I mean, I don't know how in totality the road would be from the end of Lawrence Hayden to get to Route 4. I don't know what that distance is.
Yeah.
I'm just curious as to how much of a dent would this make? Would it get it within a half mile? You know, like I say, I'm asking questions that I would think somebody knows. I do not know that length. I mean, I don't think anything's been done on that inner parcel connector ever yet, has it? Other than maybe a study or two.
No,
No
not to
work,
my-
no physical
my-
work has taken place by anybody.
No construction
think.
in the field.
How about
That's what I believe.
at the end of your property to get to Route 4, do you have any idea, is there one landowner, 10 landowners? Has any property acquisition been looked at? I'm not really asking you guys, because I understand you wouldn't know because it's not your property, but just wondering, I mean, I just see how long FDR has taken, and a lot of that is because of environmental concerns and land acquisition. I think I've always heard is one of the most challenging parts of that.
Yeah.
So I was just curious on this, I mean, if you build half a road, it still doesn't serve anything, was what I'm saying. Your part's done, but to connect to Route 4, if it's another 25 years, I just was curious as to,
Right.
and I understand you guys may not know.
Yeah, I can't answer how many landowners or what the length is, but I can tell you that connection that we're talking about from the end of Lawrence Hayden Road, if it connects to the end of Wildwood Parkway, which is already constructed, that would be, it would not be a road to nowhere. There would be immediate access from the back of Wildwood, from Evergreen Elementary School, out through that connection to Lawrence Hayden Road and out. And likewise for EMS coming from Hollywood, they could come Lawrence Hayden Road and come into the back that way as well. It would provide another more upgraded, beyond a residential development type road to that area for access is what it would do. So it would have connection. It wouldn't just be extended and stopped, I guess is what I'm trying to say. To take it on out to Route 4, I don't know the rest of the property owners there, and I don't know how far it is, but
But your part would build it from the end of Lawrence Hayden through your property, or this property, to connect with Wildwood
to
Parkway.
the parkway, correct.
Yeah, and I mean, I share your frustration. I think everybody in the county does. I mean, I remember when FDR ended where the new animal shelter is now for years.
Oh, yeah.
And you looked at that, you know, the sign that was there, so you didn't drive down it by mistake, that was there, and it was frustrating, saying, when is this ever going to get built? But the other part of that story is we are here planning for this, and the way that FDR got built was in stages, but now it's built. It takes a lot longer than anybody wants to do this. You know, unless our taxes get raised up a lot higher and the county just builds it out, but that's not what anybody wants either.
Yeah.
So like to get these done, they get done in stages, unfortunately, because that's the realistic way to add infrastructure to our county. That's the only way we've ever found a way to do it as a county that I've seen in the 25 years I've been doing this stuff. That's really the way to do it. And this is a big chunk of it that'll be done without acquisition costs, without engineering costs to the county, without any of that. It's all going to be borne.
And for all nights for Mr. Norris not to be here from,
Jesse's here.
oh, yes, I'm sorry, Jesse. Quick question about what is, you might want to come up to a mic so you record it. What is the designation of Lawrence Hayden Roads? Is it a minor collector, major collector?
I
I believe right now it's just a local. I'd have to go double check and verify that, though.
Okay, so there would be quite a bit of upgrading needed for,
Yes. It would have to be probably a major collector, depending, we're looking at, what, 400-plus houses for this thing? Yeah.
and that would have to go from wherever it came out, which is, I guess, is already existing in the back.
Yeah, it ties into, I want to say it's Airport View.
Well, if you go one way, it ties into airport. If you go the other way, it ties into,
It ties back in.
St. John's.
St. John's towards
Sandy
Tallwood,
Bottom.
coming back out that
Sandy
Sandy
direction.
Bottom and St. John's.
okay.
Yeah.
Which weren't adequate
Yeah,
when
it
we
ties, yeah.
did the other development.
Okay.
So if I could just add one more thing. I'm just as far as listening to, to everyone's comments, which, certainly appreciate. As I mentioned in the last presentation, it's concerns that I have as well as being a resident. But I got to say, I'm just a little bit confused from the feedback because, what I've heard throughout the housing symposiums at the college, different events, that the county needs housing. But what I'm hearing is that there's not enough infrastructure to support the housing. And it sounds like it's whether you're in the development district or not, because a lot of the developments that were mentioned are in the development district, which require the same adequacy of public facilities that this development would need. So I guess where I'm a little confused is we need housing. We're willing to offer to comply with any and all of the adequacy of public facilities, all of the environmental constraints, every regulation that is in existence. We are certainly willing to come back to this board and demonstrate that we can do that. But it just feels as though there's a feeling that there's already not enough infrastructure, whether we're in the development district or not. It just leaves me, honestly, as a developer, thinking, well, I feel like I'm coming forward with a proposal with a significant investment and of great public benefit to the county, and it just feels like it's. I'm a little confused. I would just like to ask for a little feedback there or direction. But,
Let me ask you a question. Right now with your PUD, you can build 415 more houses. You have permission to build 415 more dwellings. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But you just don't have any room for it.
I wouldn't say that I agree
Well,
with
I mean,
that.
you could make it, you could make it ugly. I mean, I'm not being smart or anything. I'm just saying, instead of nice,
Let's say
you
that
have a very nice neighborhood.
consistent with the neighborhood, the way that it's
Good
been
word.
built to this point.
Thank you.
It would be more difficult to do it that way to get the additional 415 units.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything to be confused about. We just want this done correctly, and we do want growth. It's not that. We don't have to have it all at one time either. We need to plan it out and be ready for it.
And I guess I'm just asking for a chance to do that, a chance to get the designations that we need to be able to move forward to show you guys how and demonstrate to you that we can do it. Or if we can't do it. If we can't do it, then, that'll be very clear very soon in the next hearings that we have. It'll be pretty easy to pick that out.
And it's hard for everybody to sit here and think of what we'll need in 10 years. Like, things have changed a lot in the last 10 to 15 years since the last plan. This is really a plan to plan for the unforeseen or plan for what may happen. But each project has to stand or fall on its own. So this isn't approving anything. It's just saying down the road, you got the right to come back in. If we don't like it, you don't get it.
Yeah, and I would say, if it's not now, then when is it? If it's not here, then where is it? Yeah, for, the property that has a lot of the, as I mentioned several times, the infrastructure components already in place, so. that's all.
Sean, I think one of the big questions is that, and it's not that any one developer is better than another one. I've sold many homes in Wildwood over the years when I was still selling, and Forest Farms and over the years, but I think one of the things that we always seem to ask, and I understand this is not at concept level, it's nowhere near any of that, but having the ability to do something like over 2,500 homes could legally be built by the density under which you're asking for. Things like that always come into people's minds, and we've seen a huge, and I don't care what a person lives in, townhouse, single-family house, duplex, condo, makes no difference to me. We've seen a huge amount of townhouses built all over the place and hardly any single-family homes. And I understand that your initial, what you showed us, said, we're going to build some single-family and some townhouses, but we always we've heard from many developers that, well, when the market changes, we have to change, which means we may have to build 400 townhouses and 15 single-family homes. I'm not saying that you've ever done that. I'm just saying that we've heard that in other meetings before that, well, we planned that, but the market It's all based upon the market. Whether a subdivision, we've approved subdivisions and never even been built. I guess because, and it's, you do it for a living, it's always, I guess if the real estate market bottom fell out in a year, you're not going to be building 415 homes, I would assume. I'm just saying things are so gray. And I understand you're not asking to do any of that right now, but I'm saying it's like an open-ended thing that something could be done. You may not be there in 5 years. We may not be here in 5 years. I'm just saying this always seems to be and I'm not saying I am for or against. I always have a lot of questions, as Mr. Longmore knows. But just saying there are always things that sticks in my mind, and I'm sure other people's thinks about some of those things.
Yeah, valid concerns. Yeah, and I as you said, can't really speak to the future.
Sure.
It's hard
And
to do that.
I think it's a good thing that you're only asking to build 415 homes, where legally you could build them 415 homes right now without doing anything. I understand that. So
The only thing I would offer to you for that is that the Stanley Martin has already invested in the property. They already own the property. So I feel like, and I've been involved in some of those propositional type developments where you're prospecting as a developer, you're looking at, buying a piece of property to see what you can do. And you have to consider the investment in the property, along with all the other considerations. Again, back to where I feel like this property is a little bit more unique is that Stanley Martin already owns this property, and they've already made a significant investment in the adjoining residential infrastructure, roads and sewers and water systems, as I mentioned. So they've already invested in it. That gives us some degree that there will be a continuation of that kind of behavior.
let me ask you one more question, and I'll be done. I think you've owned this property since 2004, something around there.
Sounds about right, yep.
I wasn't on the board in 2010 or when the last comp plan was done. Was this property asked to be changed at the 2010 comprehensive?
I'm
No.
I'm
I don't know.
sorry.
Plan
I don't
update, just
remember.
curious.
Yeah, I don't know. I certainly wasn't involved, but I'm not sure.
Okay, I'm just curious if it had been asked
No.
then.
No, it wasn't.
No, okay, I'm just was,
Yeah.
and I'm assuming it's because you still had plenty of lots left to build from 2010 to now, within Wildwood. I mean, who would
At
want
that
to?
time, Wildwood was,
Still under quite
development
a
was
few
ensuing
homes. Okay.
pretty much there.
All right, appreciate it.
Yep.
I just have one comment that hasn't been addressed. This property is designated as priority preservation area for agriculture, and it's also a state national resource. It has state national natural resource focus. We've heard the citizens of the United States, of St. Mary's County state that they want us to maintain the rural features of this county. And that's another issue that is in the back of my mind that I don't feel comfortable with, is the fact that you're asking us to take a beautiful farmland, and it's designated as such, and turn it into another little mini Wildwood, because I don't have any better way I'm concerned about that. So I'm just throwing it out there.
And we certainly heard the comments, and we respect the opinions of everybody that got up here and spoke them. I look at the communities that are there now. I think I said this last week. Wildwood and Forest Farm, they're thriving, lovely communities, and they were, if we go back, everything gets developed at some point in doing it. And when you look at where this parcel is located between two pretty dense developments, and with the thrust and the state and the county, Commissioner Delahaye, I understand your statement that a lot of these were approved in Lexington Park, but that's because that's where the plan and the zoning ordinance says to develop everything. And that it seems like if we're going to have a need for additional housing going forward, not our numbers, your numbers, and we want to find appropriate places to do it, doing it where there's already development around it is better than going to the scenic byways going in and out of the county where nobody wants it, where some of the comments that were made before about the areas that are actively farmed, you drive through it. That's what I think Sean was mentioning there. We certainly respect that the people living near there would rather it not be developed, and there's nothing I can say to that. They have the right to that opinion. I think probably anybody that lives near undeveloped property feels that way. I know I do with properties around me. Stewart's Grant's going to go behind the property where I am, and that's going to be a big development. But it's kind of looking at the right area to add some potential new areas. Because even though the statement's made that you can put 2,000 homes there, put aside what the plans are here, put aside if it was just looking at it as a raw number like that, I mentioned it last time, you can almost never get to that density with all the rules that are in place on open space requirements and environmental features and all of those things. So we are going to have I think a crisis of density. I'm worried about that. And with the concerns that, we didn't, and to clarify for the record, and I don't think I said this, but if it came out this way or if it was inartful in what I said, we weren't saying that the Navy supported this project, but we were saying, I don't think we said that. We can go watch the video, but I'd like to clarify, so I'm being clear about
Outbursts
it.
from the audience.
Yeah, I'd like to clarify so we're being clear about it. The slide that we showed you from the Navy's presentation showing the area that they're concerned about and they want to comment on projects is much wider than the AQs, and it's in our development district. So those numbers in your comprehensive plan that say we have enough acreage to develop over the next through 2045 is what that says we need. A lot of that appears to be of concern to the Navy, and I know how important that is to this planning commission from recent projects that were before you. So we're at a point where we're planning for the potential of the future. This is the one time this planning commission will get to do it, because it's not going to happen for another 10 years, so it'll be different people sitting up there at that time. This is when we have to plan for those eventualities later, and we have that information right now. We know that. That isn't a slide we made up. The point was that we're outside of the area they're concerned here. So we think this will be supportive of their goals, not that they came out and supported it. That is not what I meant to say if it came out that way, just to clarify that for the record. But it is, if you look at that semicircle around the Navy base, that covers almost the whole development district right now. And that's got to be of concern if we need this housing in the county, right?
The reason why I brought up those places that we've approved already is I think we've really reached a saturation point with traffic there. And you can still build 5 really beautiful homes on those 5 acres, 5 acres each, and get a lot of money. Well, I don't know why we have to give you more money to make more houses, because I know that's the game. That's the name of the game. I'm sure you find some land someplace else to buy, build 415 houses.
I'm not sure how to
Units.
address that, but yes, I mean, it's no secret we're a home building company and we're in business to make
Right.
profit.
I mean, it is.
And certain amount of that money, is what fuels what we're able to build in terms of infrastructure and public benefit things like the cross-county connector roadway, the recreational component that we
I
spoke
mean, it's like the
of.
field of dreams. Do you build the houses and they'll come, or do they come and you build the houses? I mean, so I think we need to pump the brakes a little bit and just slow down. I'm not going to say anymore.
John, I have one more question for you. You guys haven't reached out to the school board at all. I know, like I say, it's early for everything, but this is the first project where I've seen that they did not support. And I'm assuming it's because, like Ms. Delahaye said, I don't know how many houses have been approved over the last 4 or 5 years. I know it's quite a bit. Are they saying, I was just wondering if, I wish somebody was here from the school board to address that as why. I'm assuming it's because of school seats that they're worried about in the future.
I don't want to speak for them on it. I mean, Sean, I know that we're proffering to reach out to them. I believe some efforts were made to reach out to them and weren't able to get a response when the initial comments came out from members of our team to see if we could address the concerns and that wasn't.
Just rare since
it wasn't made
you
available.
could technically build 400 more homes already, through the PUD agreement. And they would,
Right.
not, oppose. I've never seen them do that. Just curiosity for
Yeah,
me.
no. And I think that it surprised me a little bit based on some of the recent comments that have been made about school seats and how the Board of Ed approaches it. But the comments are there, and we know you'll consider them.
Yeah, because I think,
Give them the work.
I think the school seats are kind of like, Metcom EDUs, they're kind of like first come, first serve, right? Whatever's built first, they get the school seats. They don't save them because somebody says we're going to build a subdivision in 5 years. I think they're
Right.
first come, first serve. So I don't know.
It's at the approval of the projects, I believe,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
when they check for adequacy. It's,
Yeah.
depends on
Okay.
whether it's a subdivision or site plan,
Yeah,
different
okay.
points in the
That's all I
process.
had, Mr. Chairman.
And the one other small thing with the, I'll say the roads, and the roads are most important. If you can't get in and out, well, then you got a problem. But the interparcel connector that you're talking about, your property is 272 acres, I think is what it is for the, I call it the wood farm. But you got 240 acres to go through to get to the other side that you really have no idea, nobody has any idea. That gentleman, it could turn into another FDR Boulevard where they know what they got. And now we're going to hold on to it until the county, till we have a builder that comes along, that really wants to pay for that. That's part of my worry.
Yeah, no. And I don't think there's any, I'm not going to suggest that is wrong to look at it, but to get half of it built instead of having two landowners that are holding out. It's the county transportation plan, and they did the St. Andrews plan in 2020. We cited that. And that's a more recent one than the 2006 transportation plan that put it there. To pull traffic off of other roads, you got to build new roads, or people got to leave the county. Yeah. And I'm glad the people that are in this room are part of the county. A lot of them weren't 16 years ago when we did the last plan. And I think our county is stronger for it. I think we're lucky to be a growing and vibrant community. And this is a way to get half of it built is better than getting none of it. I'd rather have half a loaf than none.
FDR Boulevard was a big plan too, but look how long it took. And
I know, but we got it. Like,
No, we
imagine
don't.
if we
We don't
didn't have it. If we hadn't have started,
we don't have it.
if we hadn't have started where we started, we wouldn't have it today.
Oh, I know that. Shoulda, coulda. I mean, that would have been a great deal. I mean, if they'd done that 25 years ago, we probably have a bigger road even than FDR Boulevard, but it's adequate for what it accomplishes right now.
Right.
And we're lucky to have that.
Right.
Anybody else got anything? No.
Rereading St. Mary's County Public Schools comments, they do allude that a land dedication would be acceptable mitigation.
I think that was in their initial comments, right, Commissioner? That was part of what they proposed, and that's what my client's willing to work with them on. So,
Howard?
Yeah, I did have, because I wasn't here last week, but I listened in on the whole thing on my way back from town. Stanley Martin was offering, as I started, I have notes here, and I started down my list. They were offering, I thought a lot as far as offering land for school. They're a portion of a county connector. And what the reality is that the county, we don't fund our own improvements. If you think about it, every project except for maybe FDR Boulevard has been funded by developers of some point. Unless we want our taxes to go up, we're not going to get the improvements that we need without doing development. But that's something that we can address. I'm very familiar with those roads because for 38 years I worked off of Airport View Drive. Thank you for reminding us that this is not the site plan development, because I'm looking at this going, there's no way with Sandy Bottom, Lawrence Hayden, and that whole back area there. I used to drive it and cut through it all the time. They're inadequate roads for adding those houses. So depending on the decision, if this goes forward, just know that that's a big deal, that whole section back there. So appreciate the clarification. And the one question that I did have that hasn't been addressed by comments from Lynn and others was, and you mentioned the residents talked about, I mean, it is a forested area, so it's an environmentally, provides your forest, but there's drainage issues. And you mentioned that you're under new requirements with the ESD. That's not the same requirements that we had before, but that the drainage issues, I mean, this goes as far as to impacting McIntosh Run, which floods a lot. Can you talk a little bit more about that from the environmental standpoint? Are you proposing that the things that you would be looking at doing wouldn't impact the existing residents and the drainage issues that they're having? And
So-
then ultimately McIntosh and every other stream nearby?
So we will have to do an environmental site assessment as part of our, we'll do that actually much earlier in the process, where we delineate all of the wetlands that, are of state concern, all the environmental features that have been mentioned. We'll have to map those and have a plan in place for that. And then we'll also have to do a floodplain study for the drainage area to determine what the impact would be and mitigate as appropriate if it does show that there is a concern there.
Okay.
Frankly, I think Sean nailed it. But in 2010, Maryland Department of the Environment, when they first initiated the environmental site design requirements, the whole objective was to treat stormwater runoff right at what they call the point source. So you're supposed to be encouraging infiltration devices so that it doesn't have an opportunity to channelize and to eventually erode any down. So there should be no downstream effect. That was the whole intent of the changes that Maryland made in 2010, and we would certainly be beholden to that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Anybody have anything else? Well, we got quite a bucket full here. Planning Commission. We're supposed to plan. I hear very good arguments from Mr. Longmore this evening and y'all. I have problems just like everybody else does. I worry about roads, especially first right off the bat, because I don't think Sandy Bottom Road or Lawrence Hayden is ready for all that. But I know we have to get ready for this. This isn't a very popular thing. I mean, this is killing me. But we've got a plan. When it gets to us, which could be, it won't be too soon, I don't believe, but an applicant would have to have their ducks in a row. I mean, one of the biggest hurdles they have is transportation. We've seen through FDR Boulevard how long it takes to get a piece of road through. And that wasn't just the county, that was done with developers and such too. They put in their stuff too. We see a 240-acre piece of property that they're talking about they might put a road through. We don't know that they're going to be able to do it. That man might have something different, God knows. And only he does at this point. But we've got a plan. So, and if this was to go through, and I think Mr. Longmore knows, and I know Sean does, that it's not going to be easy, and I don't know how you would be able to do some of these things. But the county has to get ready. This is just my opinion. And it changed tonight. I didn't come in here ready to move forward with this thing. But I am ready for this county, because of the way things are changing, to be ready for it. Now, just because and I'm just speaking for myself, if I was to say, okay, look, we're going to approve this, you by far haven't proven to this board member what you're talking about doing is going to fly. But within your comments in here, you got Rexton Park that would benefit slightly from this, even though they said they don't need it. But I have heard differently on that. St. Mary's County Public Schools said, at the beginning, say they do not support. But if you give them room for that extra school, because there's just no more room in that school. My grandchildren went to that school. There wasn't any room, and that was 10 years ago, I think, something like that, close to it if it wasn't. There's a lot of hurdles. So, the zoning might get changed, but by far, nothing's been approved for this to move forward with anything. I mean, other than the zoning's been changed, and it's very worrisome. It's getting close. There's other cases that are going to come here tonight. We're talking about right in town centers, things like that. It's branching out. But you also have a permission for 415 more houses. And in my thoughts, and the thoughts that people have said to me, it would be better to have that on a bigger piece of property than to try to jam them all in there where you got now. Because when Wildwood started, I mean, you can come in on any entrance, and I probably will catch hell for this, but I mean, you'll see the Whittingale side of it, where you don't even see a house or see a condo or see an apartment really, until you get further down. But things changed. People didn't want those types of houses that are there at the beginning, and they bought them. I mean, I don't think you have a whole lot of houses that aren't sold back in there. I could be wrong, but I think you're selling them. From what I see and what I've seen being built back in there, it's been pretty successful. But you sure haven't gotten any permission to do that yet. But I've been told by former planning commission members and people that I know that have been on both sides of the appeals, and that we're supposed to plan. All right, I'm ready to plan. But I'm not, don't ask me for permission for a concept site plan, because that's years in the making. And then you're going to have to prove that, one, you're not going to impact the people that are in Wildwood right now. You're going to have to make it better so that they can get in and out of there. And Lawrence Hayden, with that road that goes around the runway and all that stuff, that's no primo. And when you get to Sandy Bottom, that's no primo. Damn, if you're not going to have to do a lot of work somewhere down the road. But I'm just saying, I've been on the planning commission for a long time, and I'm trying to help with the planning. That's all I got to say.
I have a couple comments, and it won't be real. And like I said, this is not necessarily how I'm voting when it comes to a vote, but I do agree with the fact that I don't know if it's a fair or unfair process that landowners, other than what Mr. Longmore has been in front of us 10 or 15 times over the last 10 years or something, arguing that certain properties, and it could be this is owned this is owned this, the one in the middle is not, was it an error? That this is the only time that any landowner gets to come before us in the last 16 years and ask for a change. And even if it's another 10 years, I mean, that's a long time. And I thought about this for the past week, and I still really don't know how I'll vote on it, because it's a touching situation to hear all the comments and people. But they do have to, if it's approved, they do have to come back in front of this board, this very same board, if it's within the next 4.5 years for me, for any kind of approvals. And I think before that was to happen, I think, like Chairman Thompson said, there's a lot of work that would need to be done. And also, don't forget that after this is only one facet of this is not even a facet of the
Process.
New comp plan approval and implementation. Soon after that, I would hope that we would take the endeavor of updating the zoning ordinance with some additional requirements, things, whatever, hopefully would be incorporated into the updated zoning ordinance, not to hurt or harm any particular developer, but to protect the county on things that we've argued for the past that were kind of weak in our minds, or my mind, over the last 10 years. So that's another factor that, we would have to do. And there's plenty of hurdles for them, roads, they have to get the water and sewer category changed. Are there going to be school seats when they get around to this? And in my mind, when you look at it on the GIS map, it is, and I know the folks of Wildwood that border this don't like it, and Forest Farms don't like it, but it is right in between two large housing developments. Like I say, I'm not saying this is a vote. I'm just saying that that's how I see this. That I think the hardest challenge is the fact that I've come to realize that any landowner only has a very small window. I mean, if you can only do something every 10 years, or someone said, yeah, you can only do this every 10 years, I would think you'd be flooded with things that wanted to be done. So I'm just saying that I think that whatever way this goes, if it's an affirmative vote, I still think there's a lot of work that would have to be done. And if anything wasn't followed through with what they said, and I don't know Stanley Martin to ever be like that. Like I've sold many homes in Wildwood back when I was doing that. I'm not doing that anymore, so it's not a pitch for me to sell anything. But I've never known them not to do what they said they would do or attempt to do. So just my little bit of knowledge on this. So that's all I have.
I think one thing for us to think about is this, like you guys said, is not approving anything. There's multiple checks and balances in our system. And I think what they're really asking for is the opportunity to present, and then our checks and balances to do what they've been made to do. Nothing is saying that this is going to get approved tonight and they're going to put a shovel in the ground tomorrow. My experience with this board or commission is that, if we don't like it, we don't approve it. It's that simple. And all they're asking is for the opportunity to present that for our approval. I think sometimes, you get caught into all of a sudden it's a yes and tomorrow there's going to be 400 homes in my backyard. That's not the case with this. They're looking, realistically though, I think it's going to be years before they start building in there. And I think that just as any other citizen of St. Mary's County, property owner of St. Mary's County, I feel they deserve the opportunity to present their case.
I think we have a lot more landowners out here who should also have a say. And they've made themselves very clear. We've got a tough job. He can still make money on that land. We don't have to give him a gift of $1 billion just because he wants to build 415 houses.
I don't see us giving any gift to the developer for what they would have to do for us to approve this. This is huge. These are roads, what would have to be done for this board to approve, they're asking for is a zoning change, as Connor said, not a site plan.
Lawrence Hayden alone is roughly, from a measurement I did, about 2.5 miles worth of road from Sandy Bottom, from the intersection of Lawrence Hayden and Sandy Bottom to the front of this property.
It's about 2.5 miles.
Yep.
Yeah, so this is not making billions on what it would cost to get this plan approved by the board. So I want to make that comment.
Please, don't.
We disagree.
I don't.
Anybody else? I think we've gone through what we had. Does anybody want to consider making a motion? What are we going to do? What would y'all like to do?
I think we need to address the zoning change and whether we're going to approve it. So the motion would be, do we have a motion, to approve the zoning change that's been requested here?
The land use change.
The land, I'm
Land
sorry,
use
I'm
change.
sorry, the land use change.
Still going about it backwards. Like Joe said earlier. I'm not making.
All right, where are we at?
Well, I think we need to make a motion, but I don't know if I
Look,
can make it
I'm looking for some
correctly.
guidance on verbiage.
Mr. Hauser, could you come up? Give us a little guidance. Is it as simple as it sounds? Are we voting for or against the land use application for this property?
Yeah, so I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, there were not suggested motions in the packet staff gave you for these individual component choices?
Correct.
Correct, okay. So options right now, we've already basically decided that you're not going to get through the entire plan tonight. You can postpone any final decisions until you all come back August 3rd,
We'll be
if you
here.
want, or you make a decision right now, make the motion if you all are confident this is the planning commission's decision, and then staff, once we come back on August 3rd, have the final back. That will just be part of the packet at that point as a pre-decided matter. Reality is, the planning commission can walk that decision back until you all make a final recommended decision, if you all see a new change or a new circumstance with it. If you're certain you want to go forward tonight, a simple recommended motion would be to just recommend to approve the land use category change requested by Stanley Martin Homes LLC, right? Mr. Longmore, that's the title
that's
name?
I think that's
Yeah.
correct. And there's two requested items,
Right.
the land use and the Lexington Park Development District, hand in hand. So they're consistent with the two requests.
Right.
So
To become
approving,
part of the Lexington Park, you say?
that was part of the request, yeah. Because as I believe Ms. Glenn mentioned, I don't think there's any RM property that's not in a development district or town center. It makes it consistent. It allows access to all the public facilities that are there. So that's the reason why that is part of it.
Then I'm not ready for it.
You know, we keep talking about this comp plan that we've worked on for 14 years, 14 months. Seems like 14 years.
There are some board members that have done that. We
Feels like-
have turned in a comp plan, and it was never accepted.
And
So it isn't like we never did anything
right.
on this.
Every other page.
We've done two that I know of, and
Right.
might be more. Afternoons, evenings, just, we have worked on this. We had boards that didn't think that it was worthy, I guess you might say so.
Every other page, we talk about preserving rural character of this county. This is not doing it. This is just not doing it.
Okay, does the board want to move forward tonight with a motion? Or do they want to wait until the August 2nd or 3rd, whatever, 3rd meeting before we come back? Because we got other ones we have to digest tonight. We have,
I mean, I don't see what else is going to change. I mean, everybody's had time to contemplate this.
okay? Then somebody
I mean, it's
wants
just
to-
my opinion that,
I agree. Somebody like to make a motion? We'll see how it goes.
Okay.
And remember, the motion would have to be both for the motion would have to be both for the zoning change and for inclusion in the Lexington Park Development District.
I'll try. Make a motion to change the land use for the Stanley Martin properties to the requested designation, which is residential medium density, I believe, and to be incorporated into the Lexington Park development.
That's different.
it's part of the same motion? Isn't this part of the same motion?
Doesn't have to be.
It
Yeah.
do- Or
I
it
think that's up
doesn't?
to
It
you.
needs to be.
Doesn't have to be though, right?
No, it doesn't have to be.
So do we want to include it, or I was going to include it in the Lexington Park, to be incorporated into the Lexington Park Development District?
We can go with your motion. If that motion's approved. If it's not, then a revised motion could be made, and it can be separated. But right now, you're making the motion, so.
I'm making the motion to do it, to include them in the same motion.
And that's for approval.
Pardon me?
And that's
And
for
that's for approval, for the zoning change and the incorporation.
Land use.
Yeah. Thank you. I told you.
Thank y'all. Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'm going to second that with a friendly amendment.
Okay.
Please.
I think we should include tax map 33, parcel 179, tax account number 03-028674, so it specifically spells out the property. I mean, it just says what Stanley Martin has
Right.
asked for, but I think that should be included in that.
Okay.
That
You-
okay with you, Judy?
you accept that?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I have a motion. I have a second. I'm going to do roll call. Guess who's first tonight? I do it. You can go
No.
back on this whole sheet, and I go person to person, so I was ready for that, just in case. Ms. Delahaye.
No.
Okay. Ms. Filius.
Yes.
Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Cusino.
Aye.
Mr. Van Kirk.
Aye.
Ms. Roebuck.
No.
And I'm also no. It has passed. I'm not even gonna say anything about be good to your neighbors, because we're so far away from that, I thank y'all for your understanding, bringing it all to the table.
Certainly.
Wasn't an easy hearing.
No, I know. We've got,
And appreciate it.
We got a
we
lot of work.
appreciate your
Even though I
attention.
voted no.
Yeah, we got a lot of work to do. I recognize that.
We're a
You
planning
right
commission,
on
we're
with that.
helping to work with you.
A lot of work.
We're gonna take a recess. All right, we're back. How's everybody doing? All right, our next hearing this evening is going to be for the Medina property in Charlotte Hall.
All right, Medina.
Mr. Longmore, you got anything to do with that? God bless you, Mr. Longmore.
Like deja vu. Sure, happy to answer any questions on this. This is the one that's already split zoned.
Yes.
That my client is asking that it be changed from the proposed mixed-use low density that's in the current draft plan to mixed-use moderate intensity. This is the one right between Southern States and the dentist office that's there.
It's been before this board before.
It was, and they were proposing to rezone the whole property at that point. And they heard the concerns of the neighborhood, that particularly the concerns along Charlotte Hall Road. There has been a lot of development in Charlotte Hall, nobody can deny that. Their particular property is in between, pretty intense commercial use at Southern States, it's used a lot, and another dentist office. When they originally bought it, and I think I had the date that I mentioned, it's in the PowerPoint, but they bought it many years ago, more than 2 or 3 decades ago,
1989.
when it was zoned higher commercial. They're just hoping to have a reasonable use that would be compatible with the Southern States next to them, the potential to get it rezoned for that. They are not proposing to rezone the back, keep it exactly what it is, so that Charlotte Hall Road will remain as it is. That'll mean they can't put the type of commercial uses back there. It'll still be protected on that side. Keeping it split zone can be a challenge to the value of the property and to the development of it, but they're willing to keep that. And they were trying to be modest in their request. But given how it's been developed around them, they thought it was reasonable. So that was their request on this one.
Anybody have any questions that they need to ask about that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Is this the same property? I know this board, I didn't happen to be here that night, but one of them properties up there, this board voted in favor of.
There was
And then the
another.
commissioners rejected that.
There's another property nearby. I don't
wasn't
think
the same-
I don't think it was this one. They pulled this one before it went to the county commissioners because of that vote. There was another property that was proposed. I forget the property owner as I sit here, and I think it's changed hands since then. There was, again, to rezone a whole property or upzone the back and upzone the front. And that's not what these folks are proposing.
The one that got rejected, had they asked for the entire piece of property between the two roads to be all one zone?
I believe they did
or
in that
land
one.
use?
I'm doing that from memory. There are a couple of parcels there. One did get rezoned in that stretch that I was involved in. There was another one that did not by the county commissioners, and I believe it was a
I think they
full
did, and but
rezoning
they
all the way.
agreed not to use the old Charlotte Hall Road.
We don't have that PowerPoint anymore, do we, where I could look at where this is on there, the one that we seen last week?
It's on Board Docs
yeah, I
from
was gonna say
last
it's on
week.
Board
I
Docs.
think they got uploaded because I think Gabrielle
Yeah,
uploaded
you'll
it.
have to bear with me while
We bring that.
I maneuver this.
I think I wrote down, this is the property that's in between the dentist office and the Southern
In
States.
Southern States, right, right.
It's the
So, but
only property between them two?
It
or
is.
it another one?
It's the sole parcel sandwiched in between those two. If you see it.
Yeah, and I think the request was for mixed-use moderate density for the front half of the property, not the back half.
That's correct. Mixed use, moderate intensity in the front. Right now, it's proposed to be mixed use, low intensity, so it's going up one level to be in line with the Southern States property. Of course, you can't go back as deep as Southern States does because it would only be the front part of it there. It would give it a little more option in that pretty well-developed area so that they could do something compatible with what's there now. But it's not big enough to do a lot of the uses I know that people are concerned about that we might hear a little bit about in this room tomorrow night.
Just Southern States and the dentist office, the same as this request, mixed use, moderate?
Southern States is, the dentist office is not. So right now, my client's property is the first mixed-use, low-intensity that's proposed. The dentist office has that land use right now. I don't know, I haven't looked to see if their use would be compatible with the current zoning. It's been there
You
some
guys are
time.
proposing mixed use, moderate?
Yes, yeah, we are, to
Yes.
match
And-
Southern States, to match their zoning, but only on the front part of our parcel.
How does that line of delineation get chosen? You know, you keep saying the front half, the front part. Is it half, is it, who figures that out?
If, my understanding, and I wasn't involved when that was owned, and Ms. Glenn may have it, I think that was an intentional decision by the county commissioners during one of the prior zonings to protect Charlotte Hall Road.
Okay.
So they intentionally split zone property. So there's already
That's 1C
a line on our
between
zoning maps splitting it. We're proposing keep that line where it is.
Okay.
Not change the line at all. It's simply changing it to medium intensity instead of low intensity.
Okay.
Mixed use is what.
Thank
they're
you.
doing. And you can see it kind of juts around. The larger portion is actually going to stay in the
Yes.
lower
Yeah.
zone.
And I think what we did with the other properties when it came, we restricted them from using the old Charlotte Hall Road.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
can you speak into your microphone?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So on the last properties like this, it was restricted that they couldn't use Charlotte Hall Road at all, even though they own the property that connects through there.
I think that's what I recall. And I don't know that I had any site plans come in front of
No,
you.
it wasn't any site plan.
But I know that was the intention when, it's what the planning commission said they would do. Now, it would allow, I think, one or two there's a certain number of residences you could build in that back parcel that would be allowed, but that would be up to them whether they could get the entrance onto it. But you all certainly could block any entrances off of it. I know you've done that with other properties.
And
And my
looking,
client expects that. They expect to use the front portion of the
looking
property.
at the newest map, there are no entrances on Charlotte Hall Road
Yeah.
from the neighboring property, except for residential.
And they heard that before and they did withdraw it. That's why they knew that this was the one time, as we talked about in the last hearing, to come forward with a request like this. So it's moving the line one parcel over. It's certainly up to the planning commission whether you think it's appropriate. But they think with that high intensity next to them, it's fair to them to kind of recoup the investment that they put into it. When you could do a lot more back then, they're just asking to get a little bit of that back, the way it's changed over the last 30 years.
Quick question for Mr. Hauser. Mr. Hauser, if this was to move forward, could the board put a restriction at the front piece of the property, which would go to mixed-use moderate, could not use the remaining parcel that borders Charlotte Hall Road as entrance or egress?
No.
We
You
couldn't
can't.
say that?
No, that was a point tried to make in the last session, which you can't do on these at anything. You cannot grant land use changes. You can't even grant a zoning change based on a contingency like that. What you all are making when you all decide this is that a property has a better or higher use expressed in the land use categories, that if it deserves more than what it is right now, it's because there's development potential for that property that it can't reach under its current zoning, that it can under the requested zoning. And you can't restrict it based on that. You can't put artificial constraints on that. You're doing it, and you have to be doing it with the knowledge that they are going to be entitled by right to build any sort of development on that property that comports with the development regulations that are going to be applicable to it, regardless of what intentions or representations are being made to you now.
But just as the last one, they would have to come with a concept site plan again and go through that whole, so again, we're just,
Potentially, unless the rules change in such a way that those are not required for concept site plan hearings anymore, or they put a type of development on it that does not required by a concept site plan. And even if they do come in front of you for a concept site plan, the criteria they're going to be judged for is compliance with the comprehensive zoning ordinance regulations, standards that are in effect at the time they come forward with you. Not the ones in effect today, not our personal preferences for what those regulations might be in the future.
thank you.
So at no time during this process, zoning change or concept site plan,
You cannot grant a zoning change or land use category change on a promise or a representation being made by the developer and expect to hold them to it. Contract zoning is not recognized by the state of Maryland, and you cannot try right now, as a condition of granting the zoning change, to restrict them from doing things that they will otherwise be entitled to do, uses permitted in that zoning district.
I guess what I'm asking you then is will there be any time through the process all the way up to a concept site plan? If they were sitting here for a concept site plan to build another Southern States, at that time, could we say, cannot exit out the rear of the property onto Charlotte Hall Road.
So if there's a way, when, say, another concept site plan comes through, and there's a way to condition that approval, either because we do have righteous grounds for the development criteria then, to say you cannot satisfy a standard unless we put this standard on, or because the applicant just agrees to the proffer, because even if they don't have to, they just find that, discretion is the better part of valor on that one, then you can do it. But at this stage, you cannot try to
Well, I
constrain any
understand now.
future development. Yeah.
But then there's a possibility at that point of saying cannot egress through the rear of the property on Charlotte Hall Road.
There is a possibility, again, with the caveat, that when they bring projects for you that are permitted by right and satisfy the applicable development criteria in place then, that project is entitled to go through, regardless of what we might prefer in that circumstance.
The only reason I'm asking is because the project they may put on the front wouldn't be allowed in the back, so why should they be able to use it to service the high intensity or medium intensity when the back of the project is not suitable for that?
So I can't think of any specific examples off the top of my head, but if you have a landlocked property that just depends on access through differently zoned property, the road in and of itself is a permitted use. And we can think of any number of, roads that go through a less developed part of the county to satisfy or serve a greater part of the county. And again, I think probably when push comes to shove, you could probably find a way at the concept site plan stage approval to do it. And the reality is the custom in this county is that our developers have been very willing to agree to stipulations or proffers like that when it comes to it, but there's just not a way for you to insist on that right now.
Yeah, it's similar to the dentist office, I think, nothing would prevent them from asking for an entrance on that back road. It's kind of, all this is really doing is changing the land use on the front of the property, not giving them any additional rights that they don't have now. It's just the uses that would be allowed and the development standards that would be allowed on the front would change.
The
To
only
the
reason I'm
next
asking
re-up.
is because I happened to watch that commissioners meeting a few years ago, and one of their biggest pet peeves at the time was the fact that you're adding more traffic to Charlotte Hall Road. That was,
Right.
I'm not saying that was the sole purpose of them denying that at the time. I can't remember every specific thing that they said when I watched that.
And I concurred with Mr. Hauser's comments when they voted that way on that one, because it wasn't really about that night, but that was a concern, and they did vote not to approve that other property. that came
If
up.
this is a sticking point, in the back of my head, there are at least I can think of one case right now, reported opinion. I can remember the case, I can remember what it's about, can't quite remember the outcome, that involved a septic easement that was placed off-site. The off-site location of the septic easement was different from the site of the principal use, and I can't quite remember the outcome, but if the Planning Commission's decision is going to turn on this one, I know that answer is out there of what happens when subordinate functions of a use are located on elsewise zoned property in support of a use that is only permitted on the part of the property it's being located on, the principal part of it. So I know the answer's out there somewhere. For once in my life, I'm not venturing a guess as to what I think the outcome of it was.
And again, I understand we're not there this is not a concept plan, zoning change, it's just a land use opportunity, change. So I'm just was asking some bilateral questions for the future that I guess, like you said, can't be answered right now. But
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Chris, tell me again why y'all are, instead of going with mixed-use low density, you're asking for a mixed-use moderate intensity.
It allows some additional uses, and the development standards are a little more favorable to do it, and we think it's consistent with the property right next door that's already developed, and it would not be inconsistent with the dentist office. So, frankly, it gives my client a few more options with its property than it would have otherwise. They don't have any current plans that they've shared with me, and they've said they don't have any plans right now. They've held this as an investment for a long time. The partnership is a group of doctors that had the thought of opening an office down there, and they decided not to over the last 30 years. So they've held it as an investment this long. This would assist them in having other uses for it that may be able to develop, and they think it's consistent with the two on either side. If the property to the south of them was not developed yet, I think it would be a harder ask for me to come in, but we know there's an existing dentist office, so that's why we don't think the mixed-use moderate intensity will be inconsistent with that. It's kind of putting them in the same position we're in right now, but they've already developed, so that's the.
What is the zone right now?
I believe it is mixed, well, they changed the land use
residential.
categories.
Residential.
Yeah, it's, yeah.
Low density.
Right now, it's mixed. Do you have we have the zoning map up there.
Residential low
Do you want to know
density.
the zoning,
Yeah.
right? The
Yeah,
current
the
zoning
current
is
zoning.
residential mixed use.
Yeah, it's residential mixed use.
I'm-
So it's
I'm looking-
RMX,
Oh, okay.
right?
I'm looking
it's
on the
RL in the
GIS,
rear.
and it's telling me residential low density.
That's
just
the
So it
back.
is in the rear.
Yeah, the
It
rear is.
Or the parcel that, or the portion that fronts Charlotte Hall Road is RL. The portion that fronts Route 5 is RMX.
Yeah, they're all already
it's-
zoned mixed use on the front.
It's
They're all-
already mixed use low.
The
You're
front
just
part
asking
of
for
it
the
is.
next one up.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, does anybody want to do a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the change in land use for the Medina property, Medina Partnership property. That,
You want to give the address and what you're switching it to?
property address is 29805 Three Notch Road, Charlotte Hall,
Yeah.
Maryland. We're changing that from changing the land on the only the portion that fronts to Three Notch Road to mixed use moderate intensity.
Okay. Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Now, I just had a question.
Okay.
Could someone read back that motion?
So I think the motion on the floor was to approve only the front portion of the property along Three Notch Road, to go from mixed use low intensity to mixed use moderate intensity.
Okay.
Is that correct, what they're requesting?
That's correct. That's the request presented.
Any other discussion? Okay, I have a motion and a second. I'll do roll call again. Lynn Delahaye,
No.
Judy Filius,
Yes.
okay. Connor,
Aye.
okay. Jay? Aye. Cusino? Joe Van Keur?
Aye.
Patty Roebrandt?
No.
I'll vote aye on that. Okay,
Yeah, thank you very much.
thank you, sir. Okay. Okay, Bumpy Oaks.
Steve, do you want to introduce yourself again?
Yes, I'm Steve Valentine, trustee for the Bumpy Oak Court Retirement Plan Trust. And it's just an investment of the trust. It's not a retirement plan deal.
It's not a retirement community. There's
It's not a
some
retirement community.
misconception in some of the public comments that that's what it would be. And this is, again, the property that's located behind the commercial strip on Mervaldine Road that's been developed pretty heavily since the last comprehensive plan. The property owner has purchased a lot on Mervaldine Road to service the entrance. So that would be an entrance directly off of that, and not off the back roads that are there off Clark's Landing Road. The planned intensity, as we shared last time, was about 70, 71 lots is roughly and single-family homes in that area, and asking that it be brought into Hollywood Town Center, again, to allow for appropriate development and be part of that, consistent with it. This is directly across from the Air Park Innovation District that we shared last time. That is a push by the Economic and Community Development Office in the county here that got enacted a couple of years ago that you all did some work on. So we think it's a great location. Steve, I don't know if you have any other comments you wanted to point out?
No, well, yeah, we think it'll be a great improvement to that section of Maryville Dean, and I do own that, bought that commercial piece of land, and I think I sent pictures of it. And we're basically using up that commercial piece of land to create this entrance for these lots, and we don't know how many it'll be. We haven't gotten into that kind of detailed planning. We just know the land use needs to change if we're going to do it. And but what's going to happen when that road goes up the hill, we're going to wind up with a diminished commercial lot that probably will not have any access onto Maryville Dean. The access to whatever remains of my commercial lot will be a small parcel, and we'll have it come in off of we call it Highlands Drive, the road that goes up the hill. The access to that remainder of that commercial would be off of there. And that works out better for the grade-wise to try to incorporate it, but it's not going to be any, there's not going to be another O'Reilly's or a gas station or something like that that's going to be at that subdivision entrance. It's really just going to be, there's going to be a retaining wall that we can, we think we can make it look quite nice, and also connect the sidewalks over there and bring a sidewalk down out of the subdivision. And like we mentioned before, we do think we will stick with single family. I know I heard you really can't condition that, but we don't want to be back in front of you here in, a year stating otherwise. So we hope to stick with this plan. And we do think there's a market for mostly retirees that are within the county that want single-story living. So we do think that'll be a big part of the market. And so we don't really envision as many people moving from outside the county here as probably move up for a lot of the county residents who want that type of housing. And as the townhomes just don't really offer that.
Okay, does anybody on the board have questions?
Brandon, what does residential low density allow them to build there?
Say that again?
What does residential low density allow them to build there? Is it 5?
Yeah, well, the base density is 1-to-1, one unit per acre, and up to 5 per acre.
With TDRs?
Yes.
Isn't that in the district, the village center?
Pardon me?
Is it in the village center?
Hollywood's a town center.
Town center.
Yeah, it's right adjacent to it right now. We're asking that it be brought into it to allow the development to go
So
forward.
there's 2 requests.
Yes, yeah, there are 2 requests on our submittal.
Is that the only proposed ingress and egress? Is that extra
Yeah.
lot you bought, nothing on Clark's Landing Road where it has it now?
No, we talked to those two owners. There was 2 people on Clark's Landing that were
Clark's
concerned.
Landing.
Yeah, we met with Mr. Bunky this morning, actually, and he's happy with us. And we told him, we're not coming out that way to tear up his road. And we talked about the development, and he was pleased. And then we talked to another lady, Kathy Ferguson, that lives back there. She expressed concern, but Brian Clark talked with her, and she was happy with us after discussion. And we're not going to touch their area, and we've already improved the property quite a bit because somebody had planned to do a mobile home park out there and had probably 20 to 30 mobile homes, but they had homeless people that were in them more than there was, any viable, subdivision or whatever, a rental. And so we basically took all those out of there. And there was, we don't know the number of homeless that were actually living in them, but there was 3 or 4 people we dealt with and gave them money to move on to other places and, took care of them. That the owner, when we bought it, specified there were certain people he wanted to leave in there for a certain amount of time, and then, then we helped them actually move out. But now it's cleaned out, and it's.
Is there nothing on that property at all right now?
There's one house that we left. It has a gentleman that's been in there a long time, and we just left him alone.
Is that remaining? Is that
That's
going to
remaining.
remain?
That's the only house remaining out there.
Is it in that cluster of where all the mobile homes was that's shown on your old
It's,
map?
it's right off of Clark's Landing Road. When you come off of Clark's Landing into that property, it's the first house right there. It wasn't in that cluster.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't back in there. It's closer to Clark's Landing, or to the little, not Clark, it's Clark's Landing, then there's a road that branches off a private drive that goes up, that gives it access.
Okay.
that house is right close to the private drive.
And that house is just going to remain using the same entrance that he's,
Yeah,
that they've been using?
I mean, at some point, we would ask him to leave, but, you know, that could be 2 or 3 years down the road. So we're happy to have somebody back there. That way, nobody drives in back and dumps on us or does crazy things, you know.
Okay, what is, that piece of commercial property that you bought where you're proposing your entrance, how wide is that?
You know, it's a 1.3 acre property. It's like 200 feet deep. So it's probably 250, 200 feet maybe.
Wide?
Yeah, I believe
And
so.
it's-
Now, I don't know, honestly, I wish I had it in front of me, but
Is it right next to O'Reilly's?
yes, it is right next to O'Reilly's. O'Reilly's, when they bought theirs, there was a road that went up the hill to this property. That's on O'Reilly's. We're not using that. If you look at O'Reilly's, you'll be like, what's that on the side over there that goes up the hill? And it was the old road that went into that property, but O'Reilly's owns it. So we're doing a road similar grade to that road that'll be on our property. And it'll go up, and as it goes up, it'll need a retaining wall because we've got a substantial hill right there where we're trying to go in at. And so we'll have to work that hill, but it won't look like O'Reilly's. It'll look much nicer than, you know, we're not cutting the hill back. We're going to work with it and go up the hill to get our access because the property where the homes would be is pretty high up. And it's nicely separated from the commercial. In other words, they're not right in behind the commercial. They're kind of over the commercial and then in behind it.
No, I know. One of the reasons I'm asking, in one of the pictures you took, I assume O'Reilly put the sidewalk down to meet your property?
Yes,
that you
that's
purchased.
correct.
That's the end of their property. I remember when O'Reilly was in here, the Dollar General came in prior to O'Reilly even building and said they had some flooding issues at Dollar General, in general. So I'm not sure what was.
I don't know about that.
I haven't heard anything from them, not that they would come in front of our board if they still was having issues, but I mean, I go by that area quite a bit, and O'Reilly's assured them that what they were doing, and I know it's a requirement to contain your own
Stormwater.
stuff, stormwater, but it doesn't always work out like that. We've seen in plenty of places. So I'm just, since you've got such a substantial hill, and like I say, I understand that this is going to be subject to the same as we've told everybody else. You got to come back.
Yes,
We'll
exactly.
see each time you do something, but I'm just as anxious to see, because then there's a huge hill that you'll be going up for your driveway.
Yes, and I know there'll be a certain amount of stormwater coming down that hill, but once you get up over that hill, most of the water drains the other way at that point. But there will be on that driveway a lot of water to deal with. And of course, we got the whole piece of commercial land to deal with it. And so, like I said, once we're done, I'm almost sure the commercial land's going to be a lot less viable, which is also good because it'll lead one less road cut on Merville Dean. And we'll just make do with what we can on the remainder of that commercial, although we have no idea quite how it's going to look yet.
Okay.
I was concerned when we had a little development up the street, and there are substantial problems with that intersection right there because of the businesses that surround you completely. It's confusing. And for you to come straight down that hill and go right into that intersection, to me, it screams light, and that's not going to happen. The state just doesn't do lights. If I'm not mistaken, that Merville Dean, is that a county road, Jesse, or is that a state road? I just want to make sure. You'll never see a light there. My opinion. You know where I'm coming from. Worries me right there. I'm not worried about I am worried about the sidewalk. Every place should have a sidewalk that has businesses so you can go to and from, and in some place and time that will. My only concern with that whole thing is that intersection. I drive it every day.
Yeah.
So it's, I'm thoroughly
Well, we
familiar
did have
with
a discussion about it, and, it was a big effort to try to come in right to it, but the engineer felt that DPW would feel that that was the best solution, was to come right into the intersection and deal with the state on possibility of a light and just, that's what he thought. I'm like you, it does seem like it's, it'll take some study.
And you have a property that's 250 foot wide, so it could be tweaked a little bit if the state
Yeah.
or the county suggests doing
Exactly.
something like that.
Yeah.
Same hill, just might move it over 100
Yeah,
feet.
exactly.
Okay.
Well, then you have to watch out because you still have a residence there between you and Tractor Supply. I don't know what Mr. Smith's going to do, but he's still there. He's hanging in there.
Yeah, I think he's going to hang in there.
Well, I mean,
There's a one
the
gentleman
Smith
right next
family
to
owned
me.
both at your property too at one time, and then it went through Humanix and different-
Right.
a couple different variations there.
We've
Nicholson's.
talked with him also. We've said hi to him. But he's going to stay put, pretty
Oh,
sure.
yeah. I know Mr. Smith.
And when you decide to do, when you propose to do this, if it's approved, when you come back, you are, I think you mentioned last week, water and sewer?
Yes.
You'll be bringing public water and sewer?
Yes,
There.
but we would like to be made part of the town growth area. And that will allow us to get our category up and do the water and sewer. And we'll certainly participate in whatever solutions, like Chris said, the developers wind up paying for this stuff. So if somebody tells us you got to fix it, then we're going to have to deal with it.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, folks, what do we want to do? Take a motion. Or we can come back on the 3rd and vote on this one. But
No.
we have all our information tonight, so if somebody wants to make a motion one way or the other, would be appreciated.
All right, let me try. I used the wrong words, but I'll try. I make a motion for the Bumpy Oak development to change the land use category to residential low density and to be incorporated into and moved into the Hollywood Town Center.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I would just say, I would think we'd need to add the address and legal information again.
And one of them doesn't have a specific address, if I may, but I can give you the property tax ID numbers of 06-033067 and 06-032796. It's tax map 34, parcels 320 and 427.
Take that addition, okay. Okay, I have a motion and I have a second.
Second.
We'll go ahead and vote then. Lynn,
Yes.
Judy,
Yes.
Connor,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Patty.
Aye.
I'm gonna vote no on that. I have my reasons. I'm allowed to do that. So, okay.
Thank you.
Hold on a minute,
Can I
Mr.
just stay
Longmore.
here?
You might get to sit here for another
Yeah, can
one.
I just
I'm
stay?
not sure. Thank you, sir. Good luck to you. I won't tell you now because you haven't even put in an application, but you better take care of your neighbors back there.
All right, thank you for that.
Okay. I didn't say that earlier this evening. I got away from it. All right. I think we're only going to have time for one more. For the family tree in Oakville.
Yes, so this is the one, I'm just flipping the page. This is the one that is near the Wentworth Nursery that was rezoned behind it, and the Buckler's Auto Parts that were rezoned just to the south of that. All of those are now have a land use of rural commerce around it. It's a small island of RPD with rural commerce around it. They're just asking to be made consistent with it. Right now, it's improved with a single-family residence that I believe my client uses as a rental. It's not it has its issues with the noise and development that's occurred around it, so they think it'd be appropriate. It's not that it's a mistake. We think they could have come in with the change in neighborhood because this planning commission has recommended that to the neighboring properties, and the county commissioners have approved it before, but my client chose to come in as part of the planning process since we're doing it.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Right place at the right time. Okay, does anybody want to make a motion?
I move that we recommend tax map 14, parcel 31, property tax ID 06-013546. Change in map change to rural preservation, or from rural preservation to rural commerce.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call. Lynn?
Aye.
Judy?
Aye.
Connor?
Aye.
Jay?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Patty?
Aye.
I'll vote aye on that also. Okay. Yeah.
Be long, a lot of questions.
Well, I think the next two are going to be very long. I know one of them is, the other one pretty much is a, so we'll come back on the third. And finish these up. Everybody good with that?
Motion to adjourn.
Have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Patty, a second. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you all tonight.
Thank you for
This
your
was,
time.
Wasn't easy.
it was. We'll just leave it at that.